Hello friends, welcome to Challenger Tabletop. I'm Christopher and this is another Warhammer painting stream. Good to have you all back, and should be a nice relaxed evening with a really fun discussion topic. And like usual, I got my French press of coffee here, so I think that's just about ready to press down. Well, hope everybody's having a good night. It's January 2022. And we've just had the release of the Genestealer Cults Codex this week for Warhammer. So pretty big news for me, because that's one of the factions I collect. So I do have that on order, and I'm going to be painting a Genestealer Cults character tonight. The Reductus Saboteur, or since mine's a kit bash, he's male, maybe he's the Reductor Saboteur. I don't know. Let's take a look at the miniature. So here you guys can see my kit bashed Reductus Saboteur for Genestealer Cults. And this is a character who, I think he's an elite's choice. And he brings a heavy damage by setting off explosives and IEDs. And he can deploy this kind of mine, which you see I created one on a 25mm base in front of him. He's mounted on a 32mm base with some cork to stand on, just to give him a little more of a vantage point. I thought that would be cool for someone who's trying to see the exact right moment to set off his explosive. So let's go ahead and switch to our painting cam here. And I'll show you guys the miniature with some primer on it. And I did the classic zenithal spray, where you spray some white primer from above to give him a little bit of lighting. And you see made this sort of little homemade explosive trigger here from a variety of pieces. I think this is a Genestealer Acolyte hand holding TNT. The base is like an energy pack from a Imperial Guard las cannon, I think. The little antenna here are from the backpack of an an infiltrator / incursor. His cloak is made from a Warhammer Fantasy Chaos Warrior cloak, many of you may recognize. I gave him that because he's supposed to have a camo cloak, which gives him a benefit in cover. Maybe I should re-angle this a little bit. And then, let's see, hopefully we're keeping him on screen here. So then we've got the other hand holding a explosive detonator here. I think that's also from a Genestealer Cult Acolyte hybrid, as are the arms. Or maybe they're from, yeah, I think they're from that kit. His torso and legs are from a Neophyte hybrid kit, as is the head, and he has a dagger from Drukhari, and I think the TNT here is from Acolyte hybrid kit, and that's probably about all the parts covered. This is what we're going to be painting tonight. Let's go ahead and turn up my painting light just a bit here. There we go. And I'll do my best to keep him centered here while I'm painting. And then the name tag on the base, that's ordered from a company in England called versatileterrain.co.uk. It's their website. Been using them for a while. The person who runs it seems super nice. He's helped me out a lot of times when I wanted to change my order last minute or add one more nameplate. And he's always willing to drop shipping on multiple orders if you've had to order twice in a row in quick succession or something like that. Anyway, looking forward to painting this guy. I did the kit bash quite a while ago, so he's been sitting on my to-do list for a while. Probably since about November last year. And I guess we could take a quick little look at the IED here. Some TNT from I think Acolyte hybrid kit, if I remember, and I really don't know what this other part is from. Maybe it's a piece of Genestealer Cult heavy weapon, I think. And again, I think this is a backpack antenna from an infiltrator. And a little bit of cable. I'm not sure where I got that, running between the two of them. So it should be a fun little interesting character to paint. Let me go ahead and get my paints ready. I have already painted the base gray and glued some different kind of gravel to it around the cork to try to make it look like a rocky outcrop. Kind of looks like this one piece is about to break off right under his trigger device. Maybe that's what happens if I roll a 1 and miss with that. So let's get painting, and we can get into our discussion topic today, which is sort of movies that are 40K adjacent. So movies that 40K fans are probably going to enjoy, movies that, and books and comics that sort of likely inspired Warhammer to one degree or another, and ones that were likely inspired by Warhammer. So we're going to be going chronologically, starting in the 1950s and going all the way up through last year, talking about 40K adjacent media, movies, shows, and the like. Now, of course, it's very hard, if not impossible, to make this a comprehensive list, but I tried to include everything I could think of. And some of these are not exactly direct inspiration for 40K, but, had a vibe that I thought reminded me of it, or maybe could have inspired one part of the lore, or just seemed like something that would be inspiring to the creators of Warhammer, or something that the fans would really enjoy. So I will highlight my top 10 picks from this list. And so that's going to be fun. I had a great time assembling this list over the last couple hours. So painting, thinking I'm going to start out with some Screamer Pink. It's my classic Gene Stealer Cult Flesh color. I use that as a base, then I mix it into kind of a pink with some white, and then I usually do a Carroburg Crimson wash on it. So I could go ahead and get those colors out because I know we'll be needing them. Looks like maybe my Crimson wash migrated to the bottom of the paint container, as sometimes happens. Oh, here it is. I keep my paints in this, maybe I'll show you guys a little better here. Keep my paints in this just sort of Tupperware type tub with a pop shut lid here. And it's nice because it's transparent on the sides, so you can kind of see what you're digging around for most of the time. And if you can't, you can just kind of rotate it a few times, and then usually you'll see it. And I use the lid as a impromptu palette many a time. And then the other nice thing about this is if you're traveling to go paint at your friend's house, you can dump all the paints out on the table and then use it as a water bucket. So you're pretty self-sufficient wherever you go with that, something like that. And let's see, gonna get a couple brushes out here. Don't think I'm gonna be using this Pagoda too much, it's a bit big. But I've got my small base brush and my small layer brush. We'll be using these two guys. And I think we're going to start with a book, maybe the book that inspired it all. Did it introduce the term Space Marine? I'm not 100% sure about that, but back in 1959, we had Heinlein write his book, Starship Troopers. So, of course, this was made into a movie in 1997 and followed by several sequels. And I have read the book, read it probably about 20 years ago or more. And it sort of describes this very Spartan military organization that is at war with sort of an insect species that lives across multiple planets. And the humans are waging this war with a kind of a space marine force where everybody aboard the space vessel is involved in fighting the conflict. So it's a kind of a military where everybody serves multiple roles, everybody fights, and they battle wearing these sort of armored mech suits that are capable of flying around or jumping around and can launch like nuclear missile type rockets and that kind of thing. So basically, it's these sort of very macho, very masculine, very Spartan, military focused men fighting this campaign of extermination against these insects. And it's not a super long or super complex book. It seemed to, my recollection is that all it did was kind of lay out that sort of paint a picture of this conflict. And it had a main character who was one of these space marines. And it seems like definitely could be one of the inspirations for Warhammer. And then on the flip side, we had the Starship Troopers movie come out long after Warhammer had been published and become a thing. And it in turn seemed to be at least partly influenced by Warhammer 40k, in that a lot of people said, recognized that the war between the soldiers and the aliens in Starship Troopers is very reminiscent of the fighting between like Imperial Guard and Tyranids in the Warhammer setting. And something I didn't really get into video games here, but of course many people have also noticed that similarity in StarCraft, the video game, where it's very much like Space Marines versus Tyranids as well. But Starship Troopers may be a case of a book influencing the creation of Warhammer the game, followed by Warhammer the game perhaps influencing the creation of the movie. Now, I'm not sure if that's actually the case. The movie was made by Paul Verhoeven, and I have never heard anything to indicate that he's a Warhammer fan or even aware of Warhammer. But we players of the game couldn't help but notice the similarities. Looks like this guy's got some kind of little cable or something running out of his forehead. I don't know if you guys can see that. We'll zoom in here so you can see. It's kind of what it looks like to me, so I'm going to go ahead and leave that detail gray for now and probably paint it black. Or maybe I'll go ahead and paint over it for now, and then we'll come back and try to hit it with a little black paint. When it's painted, you can probably see a little better what I'm talking about there. Looks like it's raised up part of the model. Just a little tricky to get in on the side of his face here. Pardon me while I hold my breath for a second. There we go, starting to come together. And the back of his neck is also going to be hard to reach. A lot of times I feel like if you can't reach a part of a model, it's not a big deal whether you paint it or not, but in this case I feel like you can see it. It's just hard to get there with the brush. My fault, of course, because this is a kit-bashed model, so it's kind of my own creation from scratch. Rather, taken from several different kits. So if there's any issues with the way it's constructed, they're my fault. Just gave myself a haircut. I hope you like it. Kind of fun. Things you learn during the lockdown. Make my own pizza from home, so I feel like that's something I'm never going to have to pay for again. I feel like I would rather go get my hair cut. They probably do a better job than I do. But trying to tighten my belt and cut down my expenses, partly to pay off some slightly irresponsible Warhammer purchases lately. So I'm going to be painting his arms white, but his hands pink, and the idea there is that the Gene Stealers have a mix of sort of fleshy skin and like armor plates, like biological armor, so I do the armor white and the exposed skin pink. That's where that decision comes from. And I do have my Gene Stealer Cult's, what's he called? A Patriarch here for you to check out, so you can see just like an example of Gene Stealer painted with my color scheme. Not a super great paint job on him, but you can see white armor, pink skin, white claws. That's kind of what I'm going for. Definitely a speed paint on that guy. So we're doing this one to match, but more like a humanoid hybrid version. And he does have 3 arms, so 3 arms to paint. So let's see, Starship Troopers. And Starship Troopers, the movie, made in 1997, is one of my top 10 picks from this list. Should I have saved the top 10 for the end? I think I'll mention them as we go. So, Paul Verhoeven's Starship Troopers movie is an amazing mix of sort of like action, sci-fi, comedy / social commentary. Some people have said he's sort of depicting a fascist utopia in the film, in that he's depicting a human society totally united under the banner of militarism, where sort of the individual and the rights of the individual are totally subject to the needs of the state. But in case you might misinterpret the film, I don't think it's like anything like the utopia of the director, Paul Verhoeven. In fact, I think he's trying to be sort of sardonic with the film. He's like people say, you know, the same thing about Warhammer 40K, that it's kind of like a, you know, the Imperium is like a fascist government, but it's more like a parable or something. Hey, we got a follower. Welcome, Mixed Mommy. Really appreciate the follow. Hey, Kevin, good evening. Good to see you. Welcome to chat. So today our discussion topic is 40K adjacent movies, and we are painting a... Oh, if I could keep him on here. Hey, Mixed, welcome. And today we're painting a Gene Stealer Cult's Reductus Saboteur. This is a model I made myself from spare parts. Once I saw the announcement and pictures of the new upcoming model, I was very excited to build this, and I've been excited to finally get some paint on it, as the rules for this model are going to be coming out in the new codex I just ordered. Kevin, Mommy, how are you guys doing tonight? So far, the only 40K adjacent movie I've been talking about is Starship Troopers, the classic sci-fi action comedy that is based on a book from 1959. So we're going chronologically, talking about some of the movies that potentially inspired Warhammer, the game, and then eventually we'll get into movies and shows that came out after Warhammer that might have taken some inspiration from it and might appeal to some of the same fans. So are you guys science fiction movie fans? And have you seen Starship Troopers? It's one of my recommended ones. I have heard people describe it as like 90210 in space. It has kind of the feeling of kind of like a teen movie, kind of bunch of attractive main characters, but of course they're all thrown into this war fighting giant alien bugs, straight out of high school. And it also has a long kind of like training sequence where the main character is going through kind of like boot camp, and that's very reminiscent of a bunch of classic war movies like Full Metal Jacket and so on, which I assume were inspirations. Good to hear you're doing okay, Kevin. So next up, 1963, Doctor Who starts to air in the United Kingdom. And Doctor Who is a science fiction show where the Doctor, who's sort of a mysterious time traveler, travels from one time to another, fixing various problems in the sort of time-space continuum. And so this brings him into conflict with various evil aliens and robots and humans. And although it's not very focused on military sci-fi, I do feel like the sort of imaginativeness and creativity and sort of the overall science fiction themes of it could have likely inspired some elements of Warhammer. And all right, Mixed, I'm such a noob, lol. The Hunger Games movies? Yeah, possibly. Kevin, I've seen Starship Troopers. It's a good, bad movie. Yeah, that's the way to go into that one. So, Doctor Who, I don't know how much there's worth saying about, except it is still going to the present, making it the longest running thing on this list, I would say. And it probably was part of what got people in England interested in science fiction leading up to the creation of Warhammer, which of course is a miniatures game. Warhammer was created originally under the name Rogue Trader in 1986. So we're talking about Doctor Who in 1963. This would have been about about 15 years earlier. So the people who created Warhammer probably would have grown up watching Doctor Who and quite likely would have read Starship Troopers at some point during their teenage years, probably. Well, I'm sorry. I'm probably getting off camera a lot with this guy. My apologies. I haven't streamed since last week, so I'm instantly out of practice. Well, what should I paint next? I am planning to have a lot of black on this guy in terms of his outfit. But yeah, I think that's probably what I want to paint next. Okay, Mix, see you later. So let's see here. Next up, we have 1965, Dune, the book. And Dune, of course, is very much in the present consciousness because we just had the Dune movie come out this last year, 2021. So Dune was a book written in 1965, kind of a space opera focused around one planet called Arrakis, where a super important spice that's required for space travel can be harvested. And they end up having sort of various royal families fighting over the spice on Arrakis and the planet itself. And we get whole armies showing up from space and spaceships and different legions, and there's like an emperor who rules over the whole galaxy. And Dune was released as a movie in 1984. And we had Rogue Trader come out in 1986, 2 years later. So it probably was an inspiration on some level for Warhammer and Rogue Trader. And I think a lot of the influences can be seen pretty directly. So you have this sort of Emperor of the Galaxy in Dune, and we have that same sort of idea in Warhammer. You have the idea of these sort of legions of soldiers, which also shows up in the Space Marine legions in Warhammer. And let's see, what else do we have? The idea that space travel is actually very complicated and difficult and relies on like a subspecies or a race with some kinds of psychic powers. That's also present in Warhammer 40k. So I would say the idea that Dune was a major inspiration for Warhammer 40k is pretty easy to argue. And the timeline makes sense that the creators of 40K and Rogue Trader definitely would have had time to read the book, and they may well have been inspired by the release of David Lynch's version of the movie, which came out in 1984. And let's see, I haven't seen it yet, but I have a feeling that the new Dune movie probably would make my top 10. It looks very good. I have not seen it, so I can't exactly recommend it, but it definitely looks worth checking out. And I'm intending to see it once I'm able. Is this a mistake, painting the inside of this guy's cloak black? I feel like it's going to be really hard to reach the back of his cloak, but I'll give it a try. How did my zenithal spray get to the back of his cloak? That's not cool. Alright, let's see here. Kevin, Doctor Who, I've seen a few seasons of, the newer seasons. Dune, I've seen and loved the Sci-Fi Channel's miniseries. Oh yeah, good point. So there's not just the David Lynch and the new movie, there's also a Sci-Fi Channel miniseries, which I've actually seen myself, but I don't remember it very well. And overall, I saw basically good opinions of it online. So that might definitely be a good one to check out. Getting a thumbs up from Kevin here at least. And so yeah, that's Dune. What else did it have? It had sort of like psychic powers and a mix of people living with very high technology coming from space, rubbing shoulders with people with more primitive technology living on like backwards planets. That's a very kind of Warhammer trope. To the point where the stuff that's happening in the wider galaxy is almost legendary or mythical to the people on sort of more primitive worlds. Then in 1966 we've got Star Trek, the original series. And I didn't list every release date of every Star Trek series here, but of course Star Trek has lived on as multiple series. We had The Next Generation, and then Deep Space Nine, and Voyager, and Enterprise. And we've had a variety of movies, first with the cast from the original series, and then the cast of The Next Generation, and now we've got a recent kind of soft reboot of the series, directed by J.J. Abrams, the new ones, or at least the first new one. I'm not sure if he did all of them. So Star Trek features some things that I think could have been inspiring to the Warhammer universe. So we have, of course, the Federation of Planets, which is how the humans have kind of arranged themselves or organized themselves in the future of Star Trek. And Star Trek is also, I assume Dune is maybe supposed to be as well, but Star Trek is very explicitly a future of our planet and our universe. So that's something interesting that it shares in common with Warhammer, is that basically Star Trek takes place in, like, I don't know, the 23rd century or something like that. Is that right? 23rd millennium? I'm not exactly sure when Star Trek is supposed to be taking place, but it's far in the future, and so is Warhammer, so they have that in common. Just like you've got the Galactic Federation of Planets in Star Trek, you have the Imperium in Warhammer, and in both cases they are like a hegemon that controls all human activity. So for the most part, we don't really learn of like rebellions or independent nations that are separate from the Galactic Federation, and for the most part the same with the Imperium. Both of them have managed to sort of take over all human settlements, and so they have that kind of in common. And of course, Star Trek does take place aboard a military vessel. It is tasked with exploration, but nevertheless, it's got a sort of a military crew and a military ship that's loaded with weapons and shields. And I'm sure all of that must have been some of the inspiration for the space travel in Warhammer. Of course, traveling between planets is 23rd, 24th century. So I guess I was close. So that means it's only like 200 years from now or something, right? Seems a bit hard to believe. I remember when I was a kid and I was born in 82. So growing up in the 80s and 90s, we were looking forward to the year 2000 as being like far in the future, 20 years in the future, 15 years, 10 years in the future. We were all kind of imagining that the big round number of 2000 would be accompanied by huge advancements in technology. So we all thought, flying cars and jetpacks were kind of the joke tropes. But of course, we're getting there. Jetpacks have started to become a reality in more like the last 10 years, I would say. So for a while, people were saying, where's my jetpack as kind of a joke around the year 2000. And I remember reading a book called Where's My Jetpack, which was basically about the challenges of creating jetpacks and the history of actual attempts to design them. Interesting book. There's my non sequitur pick for the day. But I'm sure there's a lot more things I could say about Star Trek. Star Trek has kind of like an age of darkness or an age of strife or like a age of dark technology where they describe basically humanity on Earth getting into like a series of wars and technology sort of reverting to like a lower stage. And that is also kind of copied in some of the Warhammer 40k lore, where they talk about an age of strife when Earth was basically ripped apart by warfare, and also like kind of a high age of technology followed by kind of a dark age. And I believe there are even some kind of fan theories that Star Trek could be part of the lead up to the Warhammer 40k timeline. That there isn't necessarily anything in Warhammer 40k that would rule out Star Trek being part of its history. And of course, they don't have something like the warp speed travel present in Star Trek. The galaxy in Warhammer 40k is, I think, colonized through the warp, but during a time when the warp was more peaceful. So maybe that is related to, or maybe you could make the headcanon that the warp speed in Star Trek is somehow related to the warp in Warhammer, but it'd be a stretch. But if you were going to follow that through, you could argue that like the Vulcans or Romulans are kind of like the Eldar in Warhammer 40k, and humanity would have first spread across the stars before their empire collapsed and would have encountered these other sort of advanced races. And then when the Eldar Empire collapsed and the warp became all stormy and the Eye of Terror was created, and that could have been when basically warp travel became impossible, and then it would have been millennia before it became possible again. Hey, Nick joined the stream. Good to see you. And Kevin says, yep, the Eugenics War and World War III. Nick, hi, good to see the stream. FY, I can't see the mini in the picture. Is it because I just had him off camera? Here you go. Here you go. Always appreciate that reminder. Trying to get better at that because I've been wandering off camera with the mini all night. But we did just start about half an hour ago. And welcome, Nick. The topic today is Warhammer adjacent movies and books and inspirations for Warhammer, or likely inspirations for Warhammer, and movies that were possibly inspired by Warhammer. So we covered the book Starship Troopers from 1959. Let's see. Oh, here's something I skipped over. So this is actually from before 1959. So this should have been where we started. 1949, we had the book 1982 by George Orwell. So I do see definite inspiration in 40K from the book 1984, which basically describes a dystopian surveillance state where basically all the people are kind of miserable and nobody has any rights and the government is watching everybody all the time. And although they don't get heavily into the whole surveillance thing in Warhammer 40K, 1984, I believe, also does have the idea of sort of unending war being part of this sort of dystopian state's modus operandi. So I do see some inspiration there. Kevin, no, I think he means that it's just your face cam. Oh, I'm sorry, you guys. I have my miniature on the on my waiting to display tab there. Thank you for the reminder, or thanks for pointing that out. So here you go, getting some black paint on the this guy here, painting this Reductus Saboteur. He's like a demolitions and trap making explosives expert for the Genestealer cults. And this is a model I made to kit bash of the model. The official model is female, and so I made this male kit bash. Yeah, sorry about that, guys. On my OBS Studio, I have two screens up. One is showing my next thing I'm going to display, and one is showing what's currently on camera. So I got confused about which one I should be looking at. So we painted some pink skin for his hands and his face, and now I did some black on his kind of uniform here, or spacesuit, I guess. And I don't think there's much else to say about 1984, which I have mistakenly written as 1982, because that's when I was born, so funny mistake to make there. All right, yeah, you can tell I haven't done this in about a week. So let's see. Star Trek came out in 1966 and has pretty much been going ever since, with some interruptions. In 1968, we had 2001: A Space Odyssey. I don't know why I say we had. I wasn't around yet then. But 2001: A Space Odyssey, I feel like, was the first time that people saw a really visually spectacular science fiction space drama. And as for what elements of 2001 might have inspired Warhammer 40K, I can't really say. I don't know if... I'm sure most people would not call 2001 Warhammer adjacent, but I mention it just because people at the time describe it being a really impactful and sort of shocking cinema experience. And it would have started to get science fiction more into the mainstream and into the minds of moviegoers. And it does have some very cool sort of space shots, which are treated in a kind of a very realistic manner. And so we did get more people in space in a believable way, I guess. Hey, it's in space close enough. One feature of 2001 that might be seen as inspiration for the Warhammer universe is, yeah, I don't blame you. Kevin says, hey, I tried watching that, but I was bored out of my mind and stopped watching 45 minutes in. Well, when you can make it through 2001: A Space Odyssey, there's a more boring sci-fi movie for you to watch, which is the original Solaris. Got remade with George Clooney, but the original is like you described. So slow, it makes you stop watching. But 2001 does end with the computer on board the ship rebelling against the humans on the ship, the astronauts, and basically starting to refuse to carry out their orders and pretty much trying to kill them. And in Warhammer 40k, they have kind of a history of machines rebelling against humanity. And ever since then, thinking machines have been outlawed throughout the Imperium. So this whole idea of machines rebelling against people in the distant past and being outlawed could be a reference to 2001 or inspired by 2001. In 1977, we got the comic book Judge Dredd. And this was a comic set in like a dystopian city-state, or a dystopian sort of city world, where these crime has gotten so bad that police have been given... do I ever use a stand or something to hold the mini? I use a champagne cork. I see a lot of people doing that. Maybe I should. Somehow it just seemed like unnecessary to me. I just hold the base by the hold the miniature by the base. And in general, I have a philosophy of trying not to require like a whole lot of extra stuff no matter what I'm doing. So I always try to get by with pretty much the least whatever that I need. Which is partly why I haven't gotten an airbrush yet. I've certainly had opportunities to request one for a birthday or buy one, and I've just kind of thought, well, as long as I can get by with a brush, I'll just use the minimum of what I need. So no, I haven't ever used like a painting stand before. Wonder if it would make it easier for me to keep it on camera. I think I just gotta zoom out a bit because I'm still wandering around with this miniature a bit. So Judge Dredd, I can say, was definitely an inspiration for the Warhammer 40k universe. Not probably so much for Rogue Trader the game or Warhammer 40k the game, but in the Warhammer universe we have characters who are very much like the judges of Judge Dredd, who are basically police who are also entrusted with the responsibilities of a judge, so they can arrest someone, give them a sentence, and then carry it out all at once, which is, sort of clearly meant to be kind of Nick, cool, my fingers get stiff, I'm old. Oh yeah, no, I've never bothered me from holding the miniature. Maybe that'll come someday. Yeah, so Kevin is pointing out Necromunda, definitely. So in the Necromunda game, we have these characters called the Adeptus Arbites, or Adeptus Arbites, I'm not sure how it's supposed to be said, but they're basically straight out of Judge Dredd, almost to the point that their costumes or uniforms kind of match. Hey, another follower. Hey, Daniel Quasar. Good to see you, my friend. Welcome to the channel. Today we are painting a Warhammer model. This is a Reductus Saboteur who I kit bashed out of spare parts. And we're talking about movies that inspired the Warhammer 40k universe. Or in this case, comic books, as we were just talking about Judge Dredd, which started in 1977. Oh, thanks. Good to see you. Happy to support, says Daniel. So then, same year, 1977, we had Star Wars hit theaters. And I think Star Wars has to have been major inspiration for Warhammer 40k, just because it created so much excitement around science fiction, and it introduced us to the evil empire. And we have pretty much the evil empire in Warhammer 40k, the Imperium, although instead of being told from the standpoint of its enemies, the rebels, we get the story more or less from the standpoint of the Imperium itself. So I think that the stormtroopers and the Empire in Star Wars and the Emperor are all kind of reflected in Warhammer 40k. where we have, again, the Emperor, who's old and crusty to the point of being like a skeleton. Stormtroopers, but they're space marines, and with the added element of being like super soldiers. And we also have like the giant fleets of powerful battleships and that kind of thing. We even have something kind of like the warp travel of Star Wars, although you substitute a bunch of stars flying past, and instead you're flying through like a bunch of flames and kind of an alternate dimension. But there definitely seem to be parallels between hyperspace and the warp travel of Warhammer 40k. Maybe let's get some black paint on this guy's little explosive trigger here. Daniel Quasar has also been doing some Twitch TV, right? Feel free to post a link to your channel, Daniel. I seem to have seen that you actually interviewed the actress who played the Pink Ranger on Power Rangers the other day. Did you post a clip of that on Facebook, I think? Or at least I think that was where I saw it. That was very cool. Talking to some celebrities, that's neat. But back to the topic at hand, Star Wars. Okay, we had Star Wars 1977, Empire 1980, Return of the Jedi 1983. So all of those would have predated Rogue Trader, which came out in 1986. Daniel says, it's been a week, but yes, I've been Twitch streaming again. Post a link to your channel in the chat, just in case anyone wants to check you out. And then, so I think there's a good chance that Rogue Trader and Warhammer 40k were made by people who love Star Wars. Zardoz for sure. What's Zardoz, Nick? I am not familiar. Quasar, I didn't interview her. It was a fan meet and greet. Oh, okay. Digital con kind of like thing, but it was awesome nonetheless. That's very cool. Before I got into live streaming, I kind of dipped my toe in the water by doing like a live interview with some people on Instagram. That was really fun. It was just like a hobby meet and greet. So that was really cool. I should maybe think about doing something like that myself. Hey, all right, there's a link to Quasar's channel. Suggest checking that out. And I'm curious to hear if you've seen some of these ones I'm going to mention that are like anime coming up later. I guess I just have one anime on the list. But moving on from Star Wars, which came out in 1977, 2 years later we had Alien come out in 1979. And my dad said that when Alien came out, it was like the first time that people had seen or been exposed to the idea that encountering alien life might be something really horrible that we'd regret as a species. So Alien, of course, has a ship. Is it called the Nostromo or something? It's like a mining vessel that's on its way back to Earth, I think, carrying a bunch of mining ore. And they get a distress call from a planet that they're passing. Oh, infamous Sean Connery sci-fi. Oh, that reminds me something I could mention along with Alien. So, basically they stop on this planet to investigate the distress call, and they find this sort of ancient crashed alien ship. And when they investigate it, someone on board gets infected with an alien life form, and basically it ends up killing pretty much everybody. So, Alien was what I would call sci-fi horror, and I think that there's definitely elements of sci-fi horror throughout Warhammer 40k and Rogue Trader. And there's kind of a direct parallel to Alien in Warhammer 40k, which is the Gene Stealers. They have a kind of behavior where they'll infect one person on board a spaceship, and then that person will start turning into a gene stealer and infecting other people, and will sort of take psychic control of the people that it's infected until eventually everyone on the ship is infected, and then I guess the ship goes adrift and becomes what they call a space Hulk, until it gets discovered and investigated by some more hapless people further down the road, whether they're treasure hunters or soldiers or whatever. So that's pretty much straight out of Alien. And let's see, is there anything I should paint black over here? I guess we'll probably paint this this device here black, and probably the cable too. So I didn't have it on my list, and I don't know off the top of my head what year it was released, but there's an amazing Sean Connery movie that... so Nick says Zardoz was a infamous Sean Connery sci-fi, so I actually have not seen it, and I'm also not aware of it, so I totally must find that out. But there was another Sean Connery sci-fi I had never heard of until recently called Outland. And interestingly, Outland was made by a bunch of the same people who made Alien. So I'm not sure exactly who, but I think like set designers and costume designers. And just like in Alien and Star Wars, how they create a very sort of run-down and lived-in feeling science fiction world, where 2001: A Space Odyssey, everything looked very new and clean and sort of professional. And I would say in Star Trek as well. In Star Wars and in Alien, they introduced the idea of kind of the lived-in science fiction world, where everything's dirty and run down and looks scientifically feasible, but like it's also decades old, which is very cool. And they kind of continued that in Outland. Has a very similar design aesthetic to Alien. Nick says, check out Red Dwarf, British sci-fi comedy series. I'm sort of vaguely aware of it. I've was searching for another movie, and Red Dwarf kept popping up. So I've checked out a few minutes of it, but I'd have to actually watch a few episodes to get a sense of whether it's for me or not. Sounds interesting, though. And it probably should have ended up on this list. I'm sure it was... there was some crossover, cross-inspiration between Warhammer and Red Dwarf is my impression. But yeah, Outland is a fun one to watch. I would say it's kind of a slow burn. It's kind of, for an action sci-fi drama, it's like pretty dang slow. But it's fun, if you can handle a slow movie. They have this kind of... it takes place on a mining moon of Jupiter, I think, and basically the mining settlement only gets like supplies from like space delivery every couple months or whatever. So in the mess hall or wherever, where they're in the cafeteria, I guess, they have like a giant clock on the wall that has like a countdown to when the next shuttle is going to arrive. So it'll be like next shuttle in 3 weeks, 2 days, 44 hours, and it'll just always be counting down. And there's a period in the movie where Sean Connery's character, who's basically the chief of security for this place, finds out that there's going to be assassins on the next ship coming to kill him. And so that gives this whole countdown clock a kind of a new meaning, as it's like, almost like a how long he has left to live kind of thing. But yeah, that one was pretty fun. So Alien definitely seems like it inspired the Gene Stealers in Warhammer 40k, and I'm painting a Gene Stealer type character here. I'm painting the Gene Stealer cults, and their story is basically on a planet where a Gene Stealer has gotten into the population. It will begin to slowly infect some of the people who will be hiding out in the sewers or basements or whatever, and they will form a cult who tries to infect more people. I do have a cold, guys, so I don't know how well I'll be able to talk this whole time. Might have to go get some water once I run out of coffee. Or take a break to blow my nose or something. But I'll try on as best I can. I did take a COVID test and that was negative, so that's some good news. Although it was an at-home test and they can have a false negative. Give me just 1 second here. Oh, Nick says, I have the first 8 seasons of Red Dwarf on DVD if you want to borrow sometime. Totally, yeah, you could bring those up next time you come. That'd be cool. Nick's talking about coming over to run the live stream while we do a Warhammer 40k game. So that would be very cool. Aiming for this Saturday for our first live stream. I did have one on last Tuesday, but the stream didn't work for some reason. I think my issue was that when I was starting the stream, it asks you if you want to do a bandwidth test the first time you live stream on a new computer, and I clicked yes. And then it looked like the stream was working, and I think it was just doing a test the whole time while we played for like 3 or 4 hours. So that was unfortunate. Played a game that was My Dark Angels versus Eldar, and I did lose pretty badly. I was defeated 71 to 17, so I guess with painting score it would be like 81 to 27, something like that, but it was fun. And the narrative we had was that the Eldar, who have, psychic predictions, were able to foresee that a tainted medical shipment had arrived on the planet Icarus 2 that was carrying sort of a gene stealer infection. So they showed up to destroy the medical shipment. Oh, cool, Nick, thanks. Says he'll bring the first 2 discs on Saturday. So the Eldar were trying to destroy this medical shipment in order to save the planet, and my Dark Angels were defending the medical shipment, not knowing that it was infected. So I guess the fact that the Eldar won actually was a good thing, as far as the people in the narrative setting, anyway. Well, we got a base coat of black. What do we want to paint next? I have these kind of, I guess, red TNT dynamite he's holding. Let's paint that on both places here. And then it looks like there's a little like LED display or something on the dynamite. I guess we'll paint that afterward. All right. So let's grab some red. I've got my good old Wazdak of red here. Might need a little shake. So we're talking about Alien, 1979. And Alien is my second recommendation on this list after Starship Troopers from 1997. So Alien 1979, absolutely fantastic sci-fi horror. And I would also recommend the sequel, Aliens, from 1986. And if you love both of those, then the third one from 1992 is not terrible. And the Alien Resurrection was even kind of fun from 1997. So Alien movies, I've pretty much enjoyed those. I do enjoy sort of the mix of sci-fi and horror. And what do we have next after Alien? Battlestar Galactica, 1978. So this was the TV show that was remade. The remake from 2004 was very popular on Sci-Fi Network, I think. But the original series made quite an impression on me as a child. And it was, I think, very much a sort of a Star Wars ripoff. Nick, I bet you liked that one when you were a kid, huh? My cousin Nick's a little older than me, so he might have gotten to see more Battlestar than I did. But Battlestar Galactica, I think, had a big impression on people. It was sort of like a TV show made to try to capture the popularity of Star Wars, I think. And so it pitted human heroes who were the crew and fighter pilots of a military ship, kind of like an aircraft carrier in space. And they were up against the Cylons, who were a sort of species of robots. And Nick says, love the movie. Talking about Battlestar Galactica. So the Cylons, I think, could have been inspiration for the Necrons in Warhammer 40k, who are a race of robots. And I'm not sure exactly what the lore of the Cylons is and if it changed from the original show to the sequel. But Nick says it was on ABC in the 70s and 80s, I think. But Battlestar Galactica had a lot of really cool elements to it, like the focus on the spaceship that they were all on board, the Battlestar Galactica, which was like the last of the Battlestars, and I believe the rest had all been destroyed by the Cylons, so it was kind of like they were on the run from the Cylons, trying to stay one step ahead of them and stay alive. And then they were also like searching for Earth in Battlestar Galactica. So Earth had like was one of the 13 colonies of humans, and all the other colonies of humans, I think, had been wiped out by the Cylons. So the crew of the Battlestar Galactica was trying to find Earth, the mythical lost 13th colony. So that kind of has some of that feeling of like things from ancient times becoming like mythical, which we have in Warhammer 40k, where they talk about how like planets that have been cut off from the Imperium for thousands of years start to forget about the wider Imperium, and it becomes like almost a legend or a myth on many of these planets, where they might, no longer believe that Space Marines exist or the Emperor exists. And so part of the implication of this is that, and I think they even kind of framed it this way in the opening of every episode, was like Battlestar Galactica could be out there right now trying to find its way to Earth. Like it could be the present day here on Earth, but somewhere out there, this spaceship with super advanced technology from an advanced race of humans is like become separated from us. And so there you have kind of the mix of high technology and low technology on planets that have been cut off from each other for a huge amount of time. Nick says, saw the movie at an old drive-in, very young, from the backseat of my parents' van. Must have made an impression. And you also have that kind of thing of this sci-fi movie where it's theoretically taking place in the same real universe as the planet Earth. So I believe the movie, unless I'm mistaken, might be where they finally find Earth, and they actually have like modern day humans interacting with the crew of the Battlestar Galactica, who have all this like advanced technology. So that's kind of an interesting premise. So this would have been a movie I think they made after the show had been popular and run its course for a season or two. Okay, I guess we've also got some dynamite he's holding in his hand I want to paint. Just need a little bit of water on my brush. So that was Battlestar Galactica in 1978, and then of course they had remake in 2004, which was kind of a soft reboot, really. I can't say if it's supposed to be a continuation or not. I think it was more like a remake. So in 1978, in England, they had a publication of Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, which actually started as a radio drama, I learned today. Although it was then published as a novel in 1979. So Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, I wouldn't say is like direct inspiration for 40K, but might have helped to kind of get the British public sort of interested in science fiction and thinking about sort of vast galaxies full of aliens and adventures in the lead up to this time period. It was a very popular, I think, radio drama / novel. And it's kind of a fun story, kind of lighthearted and a little bit goofy, kind of a comedy at times. And I guess I do have one little personal anecdote to share about Hitchhiker's Guide. Has anyone here read the book or seen the movie? I know there was a more recent movie adaptation of it as well. One of the most famous sequences from Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy is this sort of, I guess, anecdote. Kevin, I think it's the ending for the new Battlestar Galactica is open to interpretation whether it's a reboot or not. Interesting. There you go. Vorkesh knows what I'm talking about. Welcome to the chat, Vorkesh. Great to have you here. So I believe I actually have the secret of the number 42 for you. Quite possibly. So in Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, there's this sort of anecdote that they build the most advanced computer ever in the galaxy, in the universe. And it's like a supercomputer that can ask any question. Nick says, it's up there all the way. Kevin says he's seen the movie. Oh, don't panic! Yeah, that's it. I guess the other most famous thing from Hitchhiker's Guide is always bring a towel with you. That's like the advice to people who are going to travel the galaxy, is the thing you most are going to want to have with you is a towel, which is kind of funny, non sequitur. But so they ask this supercomputer, what is the meaning of life and the universe and everything? And apparently this computer thinks for, I don't know, like 100 years or something, and then eventually it tells them that it's got the answer. And they're quite disappointed to learn that the answer is the number 42, which is super vague and, no one knows what to make of it. And that's kind of the joke, is on the surface is just that, how could the answer be a number? It's like a ridiculous answer to an equally ridiculous question, How can you ever really answer the question, what is the purpose of life? And the idea that you would ask a computer and it would be able to tell you is kind of ridiculous. So you had this ridiculous answer, 42. But in my research on mythology, I came across the number 42 again in a place that was that immediately made me think of Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy and kind of chilled me at that moment. And so I went and looked up, did Douglas Adams, the author of Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, ever say what he meant by the number 42? And what I discovered is that no, he never publicly announced to the public what he meant by 42 or what the meaning of it was, but that he did in fact have a meaning in mind, and he revealed it only to one close friend in like a written letter, I believe, with instructions like not to tell anybody. And so I found that, or not to reveal it. So I found that very interesting, that he did in fact have a meaning in mind behind 42, and that he only told one person and he told him not to reveal it. So all of that made me think that I had probably found the reference that he was obliquely pointing people towards, which comes from ancient Egypt. So here's my story for the number 42. Apparently, in ancient Egypt, they have this person Osiris, who was worshipped like a god, who you could look at as kind of the ancient Egyptian analog to Jesus Christ. And Osiris is believed to have traveled to the kingdom of heaven and come back to earth to tell people about his experience and try to convince them to live in a moral way. And so Osiris said that he had traveled to the admittance hall to the kingdom of heaven, where everyone who dies goes and gets asked 42 questions by a series of angels before they decide whether or not you'll be admitted into heaven. And so these are questions like, during your life, did you ever steal? Did you ever keep someone as a slave? Did you find out things that were not meant for you? So I guess like snooping. So questions like this, sort of moral questions. And surprisingly, I guess most of them sort of make as much sense today as they would have back then. But when you reach the last angel who's going to ask you the last question, apparently, supposedly by this point, most people are in despair because of the answers that they've had to give leading up to this point. They think, well, by now there's probably no chance I'm going to be let in after all these things I had to admit to. And yet, the 42nd question had the possibility of overriding your answers to all the others. And depending on your answer to the 42nd question, you might be allowed in even though you did all these other things wrong. And the 42nd question is something like, is there someone still on Earth who's glad that you lived? So that's my answer for what is the meaning of 42? Why is it the meaning of the life, the universe, and everything? It's basically that we're here to help other people, and that after you're gone, if other people are glad that you lived, that's the meaning of life. So kind of like echoed in that thing Gandalf says in Lord of the Rings, our problem is only what to do with the time that we have while we're here, kind of. And so I think that's what Douglas Adams was referring to with the number 42. And I think that the reason that he didn't want to make it explicit is that he figured most people wouldn't take it seriously if they knew what he was really talking about. And instead, he just wanted to kind of point the way and leave like a little clue for people who were already kind of on that path of looking for answers and seeking out ancient wisdom, that if you found the answer 42, you would realize that he also found it. So that's my theory about Douglas Adams, the number 42, and Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Let's see, moving on in terms of movies that are 40K adjacent, or books or comic books. And we're going chronologically, so one that I saw recommended online, which was an anime, which I've never seen, came out in 1978, and it's called Space Pirate Captain Harlock. Now, I don't know if anyone's seen this. I haven't, but it looked interesting. And it's another one which has been sort of remade over and over. They've had multiple series. And it kind of reminds me of, like, in Warhammer 40K, you have the character of like a rogue trader. This is someone who kind of flies around the galaxy on their own ship. Nick. That's why it's my favorite. Plus, I just can't live without my towel. So, Space Pirate Captain Harlock seemed like it could be from some inspiration for the rogue traders who are flying around in the Warhammer 40,000 universe. These are basically like merchants who have their own spaceship and crew of adventurers, and were sort of the focus of the original game that came out in 1986 called Rogue Trader. So I don't know for sure if it would have been on the radar of people in Britain in the 80s, but it seems possible. And it seems like maybe if you're a big 40K fan, it does seem like some kind of peripheral material that might be down your alley. And I might check it out. It looks like the original series was called Space Pirate Captain Harlock, maybe, from 1978. And then there was like a Harlock saga in the 1990s and a few different series. But those look like two of the main ones to check out. And I can't say exactly how likely they are to have been inspiration because I haven't seen them, but they look interesting. And I saw someone reference them on a list of sort of 40K adjacent material. So moving on from that, we've got Mad Max. The original Mad Max came out in 1979, which is more like just a sort of standard post-apocalyptic. Actually, no, Mad Max wasn't very post-apocalyptic. It was more like road gangs versus a cop. But then you had Road Warrior come out in 1982, which was more of a post-apocalyptic sci-fi. And the idea of these sort of road gangs and desert vehicle warfare does seem to have been an inspiration in one of the Warhammer 40K games, Gorka Morka, just sort of very Mad Max. And I would say that the Mad Max series of movies in general seem like they've been inspiration for some of the stuff that you see associated with Warhammer 40K. Some of these most recent Gene Stealer cults models that have been coming out seem like they've probably been inspired by some of the more recent Mad Max movies. We had Mad Max Fury Road come out not too long ago, and after that we had Gene Stealer cults get like buggies and motorcycles, so I definitely see some crossover inspiration there. And Mad Max also seems like inspiration for some of the very old Warhammer lore about what was happening on Earth before the Space Marines. There's sort of a time of strife when it sounds like there were sort of like road gangs fighting over the planet, and it definitely seems like they could have been watching Mad Max when they were making up that lore for the ancient history of the Warhammer 40K universe. So I would say that's probably in the mix for stuff that was inspiring at one time or another to 40K. Nick says, I've probably seen Beyond Thunderdome 40,000 times. Yep, that's the third movie in the series was Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome with, was it Tina Turner, the singer, playing a role in that. And it also featured, Master Blaster, this little dwarf riding around on the back of like a big mutant. So we see kind of references to that in Warhammer 40K to this day, where like they just released a miniature for like an orc war boss with a little goblin, Gretchen riding on his back with a little machine gun, very much like Master Blaster from Beyond Thunderdome. And Beyond Thunderdome had like, sort of gladiatorial combat in like a big cage with people swinging around on chains and stuff. Very, very classic post-apocalyptic movie that I'm sure has inspired tons of stuff. Well, I'm starting to do silver, and I guess I'll just start with the really obvious stuff that I know is going to be silver, like his little remote control and his detonator and the parts of the bomb that I just painted black. So 1981, we had a movie starring Kurt Russell that, now this one may be a bit of a stretch, but I'm going to say Escape from LA. And Escape from LA, I would say, is probably inspiration for Necromunda. In the Warhammer 40k universe, Necromunda is a hive planet, so the entire planet has been turned into one massive city, and it's basically ruled by a bunch of gangs that are always fighting each other. Kevin says, Gene Stealer cults, orcs, some of the gangs in Necromunda have inspiration from Mad Max. Yeah, I'd say it's scattered all around. Nicholas, it was the first buggy heavy movie that worked. Yeah, that's true. There have been a couple other sort of buggy movies. I'm going to mention one other here in a minute. But I would say that Mad Max and Escape from LA are probably both somewhat inspired Necromunda, as did, we already mentioned Judge Dredd. So Necromunda, you have this sort of city planet that's ruled by warring gangs who all sort of survive in this sunless sewer world, miles below the surface of, skyscrapers. And then it was remade, or there's sort of a soft reboot or a sequel, which was Escape from LA, which sort of tells the same story but set in LA. In both stories, New York or Manhattan Island and Los Angeles have both been turned into like basically walled prisons where everybody who's stuck inside is like forbidden to leave. And Kurt Russell's character gets sent in to assassinate someone or rescue someone. Pardon me one second. And I don't, let's see. So I think definitely there was some inspiration for Necromunda there, and probably the idea of these sort of hive cities where, gangs rule in the darkness. That was all probably partly inspired by Escape from LA and Escape from New York. And of course, Kurt Russell's character Snake Plissken in that movie was definitely inspiration for Solid Snake in the Metal Gear games, I would say. Moving on, we've got The Thing, 1982. So this is my third recommendation tonight. The original The Thing, I guess, was a black and white movie from Snake Plissken with a P. Nick was asking, what's his name? So let's see. So The Thing originally was a black and white movie, but my favorite version is the remake by John Carpenter from 1982, again starring Kurt Russell. So his second time on this list. And then it was remade again in 2011, which I'd say is sort of a forgettable remake that you could skip or maybe watch if you really like the 1982 version. But The Thing from 1982 is probably my favorite sci-fi horror movie, maybe my favorite sci-fi movie, period. And it follows, a group of researchers, I guess, and the helicopter pilot played by Kurt Russell in Antarctica when they encounter a sort of strange form of alien life which has been frozen in the ice and is now gotten loose and has the ability to basically absorb and replicate any other life form. So once it eats your body, it can pretend to be you, and it's it's almost impossible to tell the duplicate apart from the original person. It absorbs your memories and thoughts, and it can copy your behavior and mannerisms, and it's intelligent enough to try to conceal its existence from other people until it has a chance to attack and absorb them too. So the people on the research base basically figure out sort of enough about what this thing is that they realize they have to try to stop it from ever reaching the mainland, and at the same time they're like cut off from communication by a storm, and then it destroys their communication equipment, so they have to basically deal with it themselves. And very fun movie, very tense, very scary. The creature designed by John Carpenter was just amazing. And really fun movie, and I don't know exactly where I would point to it influencing the Warhammer 40k, but sort of just the like alien horror element, which you do see present in the Gene Stealers, and sort of permeates the Warhammer universe. And I wouldn't be surprised if there are here and there in the Warhammer lore some more direct references to it, or stories that are more inspired by it. But definitely a fun one to check out, and might have been one of the things that was inspiring the creation of Warhammer 40k. From a time-wise point of view, chronologically, The Thing came out in 1982, and we had the original Rogue Trader published just 4 years later in 1986. So I do see it kind of floating around around the same era. This guy's got a little Gene Stealer cult icon dangling by a chain, which I'm going to try and paint now. And what else? His dagger, I think I'm going to do that with some gold details. Oh, I'm trying to hit the trim on all of his spacesuit here. So around that time, we also had Blade Runner come out in 1982. So Blade Runner I also see as inspiration for sort of the hive cities of Warhammer 40k. And movie starring Harrison Ford. So I guess his second time showing up in this list, because he was also in Star Wars. And Blade Runner is about a replicant who is... or I guess it's about rebel replicants who are trying to reach the person who invented them. So they're basically robots designed to look exactly like people who have stopped following orders and sort of started acting under their own volition and killing people. And Harrison Ford plays a Blade Runner, which is kind of like a cop whose job is to hunt down these rogue machines. And part of the fun of the movie is trying to figure out if Harrison Ford's character might actually be a replicant. And depending on which version of the movie you watch, I feel like they make that more or less of a theme. And I guess maybe I kind of spoiled that. It's really not spelled out in the movie, but I feel like you're sort of left to wonder it right at the end. And then that had a sort of a sequel come out starring Ryan Gosling, and I think you have kind of the same thing going on with Ryan Gosling's character, where you're wondering if he's a replicant or not. And he's also a Blade Runner. And I think that besides kind of inspiring the hive cities, because they also depict these sort of massive sprawling cities that are just like way beyond the scope of the human being, and kind of dingy and dark and polluted and horrible to live in, which is all kind of carried over into the hive cities of Warhammer 40k. Nick says, gets better every time I see it. I would say that Blade Runner... and Blade Runner is another of my recommendations from this list. So it's my fourth recommendation after Starship Troopers from 1997, Alien from 1979, The Thing from 1982, and Blade Runner from 1982. Another way that Blade Runner kind of, I think, could have influenced the Warhammer 40k lore is that in Warhammer 40k, thinking machines are outlawed because at one point in the past they rebelled and there was this whole war to wipe them out. And so that is very much the plot line of Blade Runner. So you could see Blade Runner as potentially being a story set in the distant past of the Warhammer 40k universe, although I think we've since then had some more detailed descriptions of the war against machines. So I don't know how much those would match up. All right, well, I think we're getting pretty good on silver trim. He's starting to look a little more finished now. That silver trim adds a lot. And let's get some silver on his little IED here. See if I can keep this in frame. So, Blade Runner came out just 4 years before Rogue Trader, and I'm sure it inspired some of the description of the Hive cities. And then in 1982, we also had Rambo, starring Sylvester Stallone. Now, Rambo is not really science fiction. It's about a soldier coming back from the Vietnam War and going through kind of a mental breakdown and having to fight against like the police and various people in his hometown, kind of holding out in the woods and stuff. I haven't seen it in a long time, but there is a kind of a reference to Rambo, a fairly clear and direct homage in Warhammer 40k, which is a character who fights for the Imperial Guard, who's like a lone wolf, soldier of fortune, one-man army, kind of, named Sly Marbo. So, of course, Sly is one of the nicknames for Sylvester. So some people call Sylvester Stallone Sly Stallone. And Marbo is like an anagram of Rambo. So clearly we had some Rambo fans involved in the writing of the Warhammer 40k lore. Or at least they felt like making an homage to him with the character of Sly Marbo. And so I thought that was just worth a passing mention. Although I wouldn't, it's pretty stands out on this list in that it's not really science fiction. So then we've got 1983 through 1989 in Britain. They had a sitcom, and I don't know if it was science fiction or more just historical, called Black Adder. Has anyone seen Black Adder? Because I have not, but I've heard it's very much an inspiration for some of the Warhammer 40k novels. And I guess it's like a situational comedy where this guy Blackadder and his sort of henchman or man-at-arms or whatever go through kind of these different eras of the past. So it sounds like each season of the show is set in a different time period, but with the same characters or same actors. So it kind of feels a little bit like Doctor Who, but maybe more historical and less science fiction. And I guess it's just like a comedy. So I don't really know exactly what the deal is with Blackadder. It apparently was quite popular and has won some awards for like best character in TV or something like that in the UK. Nick says they do both. Classic. So I guess you've seen Blackadder, Nick? I have not. Sounds like it's fun. And I guess I don't have a lot to say about it, but it sounds like it was inspiring for, I don't know, Gaunt's Ghosts or Caiaphas Cain. One of the book series apparently took a lot of inspiration from it, is what I've heard. And I guess it would have been around when 40k was getting written, so it might have inspired some of the kind of character tropes we see in 40k, like the Commissar. I'm not exactly sure. So that's Blackadder. Kevin, I like Hugh Laurie and Rowan Atkinson. Nick, it's great. It was hard to find over here, but it's streaming now. Oh, okay. So I should check that out. And then this was kind of another weird one to put on the list, but why did I? Nausicaa and the Valley of the Wind. And I can't say that anyone in England would have seen it at the time. It came out in 1984, so 2 years before Rogue Trader. So probably nobody over there would have seen it. I can't say it would have been direct inspiration, but it does have a lot of interesting sci-fi, sort of subdued sci-fi elements to it. Nausicaa takes place, I think, on Earth, but it's like far in the future after kind of an environmental disaster has destroyed everything, which was maybe technologically created. There's like this sort of miasma, which has made huge parts of the world like uninhabitable, but at the same time it causes like fungi and plants to just grow out of control, creating these sort of otherworldly fungal forests. And people have reverted to kind of a medieval level of technology with windmills and gliders and stuff. So seems like there's some kind of trace technology remaining, like obviously the use of flying machines and stuff. And then interestingly, like toward the end, they're trying to reactivate these ancient war machines that have been dormant for like hundreds of years, which are like these giant walking robots with just incredible power and technology that are capable of completely annihilating whole cities. And they kind of remind me a bit of the giant walking robots in Warhammer 40k, which are the Titans. And I don't know if they would have been direct inspiration, but it's possible. And if you are a 40k fan and you've never watched Nausicaa and the Valley of the Wind, it's a Miyazaki movie. So just like the Studio Ghibli films, but it predates Studio Ghibli. And it's very fun, very dreamy and mysterious and beautiful anime movie that's definitely worth checking out. Came out in 1984, so we're almost up to 1986 when Rogue Trader comes out. Next on the list we have Terminator 1984, and it was hard for me not to put this on my recommended list. I totally recommend The Terminator and Terminator 2, at which point you could probably stop. But Terminator 2 shows you a few glimpses, and maybe Terminator 1 to a lesser extent, shows you some glimpses of this future war against the robots. And we see these Terminator robots that humanity is fighting against who look like basically walking metal skeletons wielding guns, and seem like they were direct inspiration for the Necrons in Warhammer 40k. So the whole Necron faction is pretty much like a copy-paste of the Skynet Terminator robot army, but with its sort of lore changed, in my opinion. And you get to see a bit more of this sort of sci-fi future Terminator army in one of the sequels, which is Terminator Genesis, which came out, or no, Terminator Salvation, which came out in 2009, starring Christian Bale. So if you were going to watch the Terminator movies, I would suggest Terminator 1, Terminator 2, and then maybe Terminator Salvation from 2009. But definitely don't bother with any of the others in the series. I feel like the rest are all pretty terrible. And don't at all... In fact, rather than add to the magic, the others kind of drain some of the fun and magic away from the series, which is never what you want from a sequel. So I would suggest skipping the others. But Terminator 1 is amazing, Terminator 2 is amazing, and I definitely see inspiration for the Necrons coming from that series. All right, I went silver on this guy's name tag, or nameplate, and I named him Diesel in honor of Vin Diesel, who I've heard plays Warhammer 40k. So if you were wondering what was going on with that nameplate, there's the connection. And Vin Diesel is going to come up a little later in one of my 40k adjacent movies I'm going to mention. So if you can predict which one that's going to be, feel free to type it out and spoil it. Doesn't hurt. But let's move on here. I'm going to paint just a little silver on this guy's shoulder pad, and then I'm going to come back and cover it up with a little watered down black paint to make it look like it's kind of been painted black, but the paint's wearing off is kind of what I'm going for. So the Terminator movies as inspiration for the Necrons, I think. And also, I'd say the Terminator movies also kind of fit with the theme of artificial intelligence rebelling against humanity and having to fight a war to wipe out the intelligent machines. That fits with the 40k lore. They're called the Men of Iron, I think, in 40k lore. There's like 3 or 4 different, I think maybe 3 different races of intelligent machines called like the Men of Iron, the Men of Gold, and something else. Forget what the other ones are. Nick says, I forget the name of the Studio Ghibli movie you mentioned. It reminds me of Robotech. Is it 40k related or adjacent? Oh, I was going to mention Robotech. It's coming up in just a minute here. So I'll type out Nausicaa and the Valley of the Wind here. Oh, no, I can't type in my own chat. But it's spelled N-U-S-I-C-A-A, I believe. Or N-A-U-S-I-C-A-A. Nausicaa of the Valley of the Wind. Came out in 1984. Riddick! Yeah, Vorkash, you guessed it. Oh, now I can type. I can kind of type. All right, there you go. Nausicaa of the Valley of the Wind. That's anime recommendation for all you guys. So, good guess, Forecash. You totally did guess where I was going with the Vin Diesel reference. Let's see here. We are just in 1984 with the release of Terminator, and very next one on the list was just mentioned by Nick, which is Robotech, the original television series from 1985. So this the television series of Robotech, it was an anime, and it was one I was thinking that Daniel Quasar might be a fan of, maybe. It was a combined from 3 different Japanese series, but I believe basically they took one series and made it into season 1, took another series and made it into season 2, and took another series and made it into season 3. So I think that's how Robotech works. So I've only watched the original series, like the first season, which is what I would recommend. And it's about humanity unearthing an alien spaceship on like a Hawaiian island or something, which has crashed on Earth with no life forms aboard. So it was running on some kind of artificial intelligence, and they have to sort of, like, humanity figures out how it works, and then they're able to sort of get it running, sort of. They don't like fully understand all of its systems, but they attach some like anti-gravity engines to it, and they're able to lift it up into orbit. And then an alien race shows up to attack the solar system and Earth, who is in pursuit of this alien craft. They also want to control it and learn its secrets, I guess. And they're called the Zentradi, and they, I think, could be partly inspiration for the Space Marines. The Zentradi are a race of giants, so they're all like, I think, over 10 feet tall, and they are a super warlike race who does not have any ability to invent new technology. So although they're highly advanced and they have spaceships and battle suits, and they're like sort of genetically engineered for war, they don't have the creativity to invent anything new. Nick says tabletop too, no? So Robotech is different than Battletech, which is, I think, what you're thinking of. And yep, they came out around similar time. And I should have probably had Battletech on this list, but I guess I don't really have any games listed. But Battletech has giant robots fighting, and I think also inspired some elements of Warhammer 40k. In Robotech, they pilot these space fighters that can kind of transform from looking kind of like an F-14 to a robot. So basically the engines swing down and turn into legs, and the pilot cockpit folds down and kind of becomes like a head, and the sort of underbelly pulls out some arms, And so you don't exactly have transforming robots like that in Warhammer 40k like you do in Gundam, but I do feel like the Zentradi are a lot like the Space Marines. So they're like a race of warriors. 40k also has this thing where like no new technology is being invented and all the technology is sort of handed down from ancient times, and if it's destroyed, the secrets of remaking it are kind of lost. And kind of the way like nobody is allowed to be creative, that all sort of is reminiscent in the Zentradi in Robotech. And Robotech is a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it. It is have the feeling of kind of a dated anime, but it also gets kind of hardcore at times. You know, you do have major characters killed off at times, and some very badass sort of human, war kind of action. So I quite liked Robotech, and it also has kind of a Battlestar Galactica vibe too, as you have just this one alien ship with the human crew trying to keep it alive and stay one step ahead of the Zentradi. It feels a lot like the humans in Battlestar Galactica trying to stay ahead of the Cylons. So we're now up to 1985. We have the book Ender's Game. And Ender's Game is about a boy who's being trained to command a space army to battle against an alien swarm intelligence. So you have basically space battles between regular human spacecraft and fleets of like military craft going up against these sort of swarms of alien space bugs. So kind of Starship Troopers inspired, but definitely seems like it could be inspiration for the Tyranid Hive Fleet in Warhammer 40k. You have the Tyranids are like these galaxy consuming swarms of aliens who are able to fly through space and then descend on a planet and consume every life form on it. Definitely seems kind of like the kind of enemy aliens that they're up against in Ender's Game. And there was finally a movie made of Ender's Game, and that movie also had what's his name? Han Solo from Star Wars. Why is his name slipping my head now? Harrison Ford is he I think helped make the film adaptation of that. In that, I think he produced it. Nick, do I know the comic Appleseed? Sure. Appleseed is very cool. And there's also an anime of Appleseed. And now there's like a 3D movie too, came out in I think the early 2000s. And it's very fun. I did consider if there was a way I could put it onto this list, and I just couldn't quite figure out how it would fit. Appleseed is kind of your classic anime where humans are fighting alongside sort of like cyborg robot slash what? Do dead people get put into a robot body? Is that how it works in Appleseed? Vorkesh says the movie was good if you don't want to read Ender's Game. Yeah, the movie was good. So Ender's Game came out in 1985, and the movie came out in 2013 if you want to watch that. And one thing that's very cool about Ender's Game is if you read the book, there's a sequel book called Ender's Shadow, which is the same story but told from the point of view of a different character. And I feel like that's pretty rare in literature, especially sci-fi, to have someone go back and retell the same story and same exact events from another character's point of view. And I thought it was very creative idea, and Ender's Shadow I liked and enjoyed pretty much as Ender's Game, maybe more, because it had that very kind of unique twist of getting to see all the same events from another point of view. I know I have seen that a few times happen in like the X-Men cartoons. I think in the 90s they had some episodes where they went back in time or something, and you got to see a previous episode retold, but the characters were like watching it happen from the background kind of thing. And I don't know, where else have we seen it happen? Maybe in Star Trek. I think one of the more recent Star Trek series, they went back and traveled back in time to the original series, and we got to see like a original series episode kind of retold or something, but with time travelers. But I guess in all those cases, it's someone traveling back in time, so it's not exactly the same thing as retelling the same story from a different point of view. That is pretty rare. So I think on his little loincloth, we're going to go gray and then probably paint a brown wash on it. Right now I'm using brown to just hunt down any straps or stuff I want kind of painted like a leather color. It doesn't look like he really has a visible belt, or else I would go with that. He does have straps on his TNT, and I'm realizing there's straps on this one too, so we're going to do those in brown. Just using my good old Gorthor brown. I ran out of my XV88 brown earlier today, so painting some bases. So Ender's Game, Ender's Shadow, that was 1985, so we're now just a year before the release of Rogue Trader. So at this point, I think the chances that the stuff that we're discussing was an inspiration for Rogue Trader is getting less, because it was probably already in the works at this point, but still some stuff that's sort of like Warhammer 40k adjacent, or could well have been kind of in the public consciousness at the time that Rogue Trader was coming out. So, oh yeah, Trouble with Tribbles, Vorkesh, I think that's the one where they go back to that episode in a later Star Wars, yeah, or Star Trek, I remember that. So, in 1983 we had, so I guess this is slightly out of order, we had Adventures in the Forbidden Zone. So this is a kind of sci-fi adventure, which is kind of in the spirit of Star Wars and on a much lower budget with much less space action. Vorkesh says that's a Star Trek Deep Space Nine episode. Okay, there you go. Trouble with Tribbles is a really classic episode of the original series too. So Adventures in the Forbidden Zone is kind of a low-budget sci-fi movie where it's just it would be another of these sort of buggy sci-fi movies, in that a lot of action is centered around driving around in a buggy instead of a spaceship. But it's basically a guy who is on some random planet. I guess he lands on the planet on some mission, or maybe crash lands, I can't remember, and he ends up teaming up with this local girl who he's gonna try and rescue or get off the planet, and they just sort of drive from one adventure to another in their buggy, and eventually go up against Michael Ironsides, is that his name? Plays this sort of bad guy who's like half man, half machine, and he's got like some crazy power claw. So that's very Warhammer 40k, and very fun. And I feel like Adventures in the Forbidden Zone is like totally the vibe of the original Rogue Trader game, which I think was more focused around like a group of interstellar traders landing on random planets and having random encounters with aliens and pirates and stuff like that. Another one that came out around the same time that I don't have on my list would be like Ice Pirates. I haven't actually seen that one, but it seemed like kind of similar vibe. So we do have in 1985 the movie Brazil. So Brazil was very much a movie, I would say, inspired by 1984 by George Orwell. So this sort of takes place in kind of a super city where, you know, there's terrorism going on all the time, and people are sort of always under surveillance, and it's kind of a dystopian Super City. So also these movies are kind of inspired by Metropolis, which was the original sort of film version of the Super City. And I have seen people say that they feel like Brazil has kind of a 40K vibe, like what it might be to be a citizen in the world of Warhammer 40K. Not really focused on the military, but maybe you could say it was 40K adjacent. And then I did just today come out watch the trailer of a movie that came out in 1986. So this would be the same year as Rogue Trader. And it's called Hands of Steel. And it's basically about a cyborg. It seems like it's set maybe around the present day. And he's just, I don't know, getting into trouble in the desert. But Hands of Steel, and then also in 1986, there was a movie about cyborgs called Eliminators, which I also have not fully seen, but I've watched a trailer. And Eliminators, the cyborg, I think the main cyborg actually has like robot tank treads as the lower half of his body. So we see that kind of replicated in Warhammer 40K in the Servitors, who are humans who have committed some crime and they get turned into a half-man, half-machine as like punishment for their crime. Usually they're like somewhat lobotomized in order to perform menial tasks, so it's like a form of slavery. So I definitely see some influence of Eliminators and perhaps Man of Steel or Hands of Steel in the Servitors in Warhammer 40K. Nick says Buttle or Tuttle. I'm not sure which one you're referring to. So then we have 1986 release of Rogue Trader. So the original Warhammer 40K game comes out, and at this point we can start to say that perhaps some of the movies that follow are influenced by 40K rather than influences on it. And then others, I would say, go on to influence some of the later additions to the Warhammer 40K universe. Pardon me 1 second. Don't want to stay up too late because I'm getting over a cold. I do need my sleep. So I do think I want to paint some brown on this guy's top part of his cloak, where it looks like some kind of animal hide. But this Gorthar brown is a bit gray for what I'm looking for. I think I want to add a little bit of yellow to the mix-in to create a little more of a warm brown. Let's see here. So 1986, Rogue Trader comes out in a magazine, and then 1987, its rules are published. Oh, premise of Brazil. Oh, okay. So I think in Brazil, someone's name is mistyped on some official document, and is it like the mistake is whether it's Buttle or Tuttle? So like the wrong person gets like arrested or something because of a typo in his name. So this very much comes up in Warhammer 40K. So this is a reference to the movie Brazil, and I don't know if it's also in the book 1984. I mean, to some extent this theme is, which is like out of control bureaucracy. And in 40K we have many references to the fact that the imperial bureaucracy is like takes up entire planets worth of people involved in it. So there's like, billions and billions of people involved in the imperial bureaucracy, partly because they're not able to take advantage of computers after the war against the machines and artificial intelligence has been outlawed. It means that they can't really have like big computer databases running everything, so they have to have books and scrolls and people basically involved in every element of everything that goes on in the entire Imperium, just composed of like countless planets, like millions or billions of planets. So I would not be surprised if Brazil was definitely part of the inspiration for the sort of grinding, inhuman, and sort of malfunctioning Imperium bureaucracy. Good call out there, Nick. So, 1987. So this is the same year that Rogue Trader gets released as a separate book, rule book. We had the movie Hellraiser come out. So in Hellraiser, there's some sort of mysterious artifact which is like a puzzle box, and when someone like plays with the puzzle box in the right way, it opens a portal to like another dimension or a pocket dimension or like another reality or like kind of a hell world where these creatures come out of. And what do they call them? They have a great name for the creatures. The Celebites or something like that. And basically they are creatures that are like obsessed with torture and like claiming human victims and taking them back to their hell world to torture. And this sees a sort of a reflection in the Warhammer 40k galaxy, I think, in the creation of the Drukhari, or the Dark Eldar. And the story of the Dark Eldar in Warhammer 40k is that basically they're the evil remnants of the highly advanced Eldar civilization that never gave up their evil ways, and they escaped the fall of the Eldar Empire by retreating into their own parallel dimension that they created called the Webway. And that inside the Webway they've constructed a kind of a dark city made up by sort of joining all their little pocket dimensions together. And the only way that the Dark Eldar are able to survive, they're theoretically immortal, but in order to sustain their evil souls, they have to torture beings from the real world, from real space. So just like in Hellraiser, they will travel through portals into the real space to abduct victims to take back to their parallel dimension for excruciating torture. And so I see a direct homage to Hellraiser in the Dark Eldar. So that was Hellraiser came out in 1987, and there's been several sequels. I would say probably Hellraiser 1 and 2 are both, I saw those two, and they were both pretty fun, as long as you don't mind a little bit of gore and you enjoy some kind of supernatural horror. I think those are worth checking out, and better than I expected. Like, I went most of my life not watching the Hellraiser movies because I just figured they were horrible, gory movies, but it turned out they were pretty fun, and I think I was already playing Drukhari, or Dark Eldar, in Warhammer 40k when I finally got around to watching them, and that did kind of make it more fun to watch as I started to pick up on the kind of possible inspiration for the Warhammer 40k world from that. So I think I want to leave his cloak gray, but I do want to hit it with a few highlights and then add a little bit more gray to the inner side of his cloak. I want it mostly dark, but a few little light gray swipes on it. I'm going to use Administratum gray. Hopefully I have that easy to find here. Oh, they're called the Cinnabites. Is that right? Cinnabites? I don't think that's it. I think it's close. Let's see here. Could be. So 1987, so this is around the same time as Rogue Trader, we had Predator come out. And then 3 years later in 1990, we got Predator 2. And I do highly recommend Predator. It's on my top 10 recommended list here. But I don't know how much it directly inspired 40k. Do you guys see any connections to Predator in 40k? It did introduce us to a highly advanced alien race that hunts humans for sport. So that's a little bit like the Drukhari. But why did I want to put it on this list? I think just because it sort of is a military sci-fi. The main characters in the first Predator are a group of sort of soldiers of fortune who have to go head-to-head against a highly advanced, intelligent alien who's hunting them. So that seemed kind of like a little bit 40K-esque, and a little bit in the vein of Rogue Trader. Oh, Vorkash says, like the lurkers for Nids. Yeah, the Tyranids have a predator that can turn invisible called a lictor, and it can totally blend into its environment. And I would say it's totally inspired by the Predator. Good one, Vorkash. And, you know, I would say also that in Warhammer 40K we have the Catachans. They're these, like, highly capable warriors, human soldiers from the planet Catachan who live in kind of a jungle world, which is like a super deadly planet. And so all the people from there are, like, super capable warriors. I would say the Catachans are, like, straight out of Predator. They basically just took all the main soldiers of fortune from Predator and turned them pretty much into a Imperial Guard regiment for Warhammer 40K. So I think that's where we see the inspiration from Predator in the 40K game, and definitely in the what are they called? The Lictors. Predator, Rambo, yeah. Right, so I did mention that character Sly Marbo, who's very much inspired by Rambo. And I would say that Arnold Schwarzenegger and the other characters from Predator definitely inspired the Catachans. So that's Predator. Came out right around the same time as Rogue Trader, so it fits that would have inspired the Catachans, who came out a bit later. And this is the second time Schwarzenegger's shown up on our list, because he was also in Terminator and Terminator 2 and most of those movies. This is kind of a weird mention, but there was a TV show I barely remembered from my childhood that I seem to remember thinking was really cool back when I was, 8 years old, called Captain Power and the Soldiers of Tomorrow. Came out, it was running just from 1987 to 1988. Has anyone seen Captain Power and the Soldiers of Tomorrow? It is, it follows... so it takes place again after a sort of society-destroying war between the humans and the machines. So that's kind of a recurring theme around this time we see. And it featured a bunch of heroes who all wore like power armor, so very Space Marine. And they were always fighting against these sort of intelligent killer robots who, again, could have potentially been seen as inspiration for the Necrons. The only sort of problem with this is that the show I feel like was kind of very much made for kids, and so probably no one who was involved in Warhammer 40K would have been watching it, but maybe further down the road, 10 or 20 years later, some people would have grown up watching it. And again, it was only on for like a season. It may have only played in the US. I don't exactly know, but could call it 40K adjacent. I wouldn't recommend it to anybody. It looks like super cheesy when you watch it from with today's eyes, but kind of funny, just kind of worth mentioning in passing. And then in 1988, we had Akira, so another anime, and Akira features these sort of like, a few things that kind of make their way into Warhammer 40K. We've got psychic powers, which come up in 40k. In 40k, the people who have psychic powers are referred to as psychers, and they are extremely dangerous, which is something we see in Akira, where it's about Akira's about kind of like a gang of motorcycle kids, or kids who make up a motorcycle gang and get into trouble with other motorcycle gangs in Neo Tokyo, which is kind of like, Vorkesh says, an amazing anime. Yes, I agree. And do I have... Is Akira... Oh, I I don't know. I guess there's too many good ones to recommend here, so I didn't have on my top 10, but I should have. If you haven't seen Akira, you absolutely should. And one of the kids in this motorcycle gang ends up developing these psychic powers and has to get kind of like arrested by the military, who are trying to basically keep control of anyone who develops these psychic powers. And he gets put in like a institution, and he breaks out of it, and his powers start growing and getting out of control. And all of this seems to have kind of a direct parallel in Warhammer 40k, where the Psychers are kind of hunted down for the same reason, that their powers get out of control, they're a danger to the people around them. And in Warhammer 40k, the Psychers get sort of arrested, put on a ship, and sent to Earth, where they're all like sacrificed to the Emperor, supposedly to keep him alive, or possibly to power the Astronomicon, which is sort of like a glowing psychic beacon that allows the navigators to make warp travel work around the galaxy. But you don't really know in Warhammer 40k if it's all true that the Psychers are being sacrificed for this important reason of keeping the Emperor alive, or for powering the Astronomicon, or maybe they're just all being killed to keep them under control, and the rest of it is just a convenient justification for that, for getting rid of them. So in Warhammer 40k, a lot of the lore, you kind of get the feeling like maybe it's true, but maybe it's all a lie. The information you're getting in Warhammer 40k, sometimes you're kind of under the impression that it might be just Imperium propaganda, and you're not really sure what you should believe. On the most basic level, is the Emperor still clinging to life these 10,000 years later, or has he in fact been dead for 10,000 years? And the whole idea that he's still alive is just, propaganda, or wishful thinking, or, religious fantasy. So I find that kind of fun and interesting element of the Warhammer 40k universe. They kind of leave it open for you to choose what you want to believe and what you want to think might be a lie, which is kind of a fun and creative idea for a setting. Well, we might be approaching fully base coated. Oh, I guess I have some things I want to paint gold on this guy. We'll do that next. For my base paint for gold, I like this Retributor armor. That's what we'll go ahead and use next. And it probably needs a shake. So Akira came out in 1988. A year later, in 1989, we had a movie I have fond memories of. Nick says, Futurama, head in a jar. Trying to think of what the reference would be there. I do feel like there is some of that in Warhammer 40k. So in 1989, we got a very fun but sort of dated robot battle movie called Robot Jox, Jox, which I have fond memories of watching as when I was about 13 or so. And Robot Jox has got kind of a funny premise, which is that the various nations of the world have agreed to outlaw warfare. I see. I should paint this guy's loincloth first. So the nations of the world. Oh, for the Emperor. Oh yeah, yes, they do kind of have that in Futurama. The immortal heads in a jar that are like thousands of years old that are still just kept alive. That is very much like the Emperor in 40K. So in Robot Jocks, the nations of the Earth have agreed to outlaw all warfare. And instead of fighting wars, they just have gladiatorial battles between giant robots, and whoever wins the fight, that will determine the result of whatever the international conflict is. So I think it starts with like the United States and Russia are having a robot gladiatorial battle for control of Alaska. And of course the Russian robot always kind of like fights dirty. Kevin says, I've seen some clips of Robot Jocks. I just watched some clips of it, or maybe I was watching the whole thing just like a year ago, and it was quite a shock to see this scene where basically there's like a whole bunch of like an audience who's going to watch this duel between the two robots. And the audience are in these stands behind some kind of protective barrier, and everyone in the audience is wearing a mask, like a COVID mask, and they're not doing it because of virus infection, but instead because like the battle between the robots will unleash huge clouds of dust, and so they're just like coming prepared for that. But it definitely was trippy to see a scene from, 1989 movie where they have an entire crowd in attendance at an event where everyone's wearing a mask. That was pretty trippy to see in 2020 or whenever it was I watched that. But Robot Jocks is fun. It's got like the old stop motion animation of the battling robots. And it's pretty dated, but it seems like obvious inspiration for the Titans in Warhammer 40K, which are the giant robots that are used to, battle over cities and planets and are the size of buildings and skyscrapers. In 1990, we had Total Recall. So this is, again, an Arnold Schwarzenegger movie. So this is his third time on the list. And Total Recall, Schwarzenegger he starts out, he's like a factory worker or something, and he goes to a company that offers you a memory vacation where you basically get the memories of a whole vacation implanted in your head, so you don't really know if it happened or not. And the idea is that this is like a cheaper alternative to actually going on a vacation, is to just have the memories implanted. And he chooses a vacation called Blue Skies on Mars, where he will be a secret agent. And then there's like a problem while they're implanting the memories. Kevin says, a streamer, Thunderhead Studio, has clips of Robot Jocks and Pacific Rim for commands. Yeah, it's. I'm sure there's a lot of people who have kind of like fond memories of Robot Jocks and have references to it. But in Total Recall, Schwarzenegger, we don't know for sure if he actually goes to Mars and really is a secret agent, or if this is all the memories that have been implanted in his head. And part of the fun of the movie is, while it's going on, trying to figure out if what you're seeing is real or implanted memories. And even at the end of it, you can't say for sure. It's like there's evidence pointing both ways throughout the movie. So very fun premise. But when he's on Mars, he sort of encounters this sort of underground resistance movement where the people are rebelling against the sort of overlord companies on Mars who are restricting their access to oxygen. And so that's kind of very Warhammer, that you have this sort of oppressive, totalitarian sort of corporations running everything. Kind of not only reminiscent of the Imperium, but of the various organizations that the Imperium probably works hand in hand with. And the sort of underground resistance movement is sort of reminiscent of the Genestealer cults lore in more recent Warhammer stuff. Pacific Rim, yeah, definitely inspired by robot jocks, I would say. Get to the chopper. So I think there's quite a few sort of Total Recall references in Warhammer 40k. Like more recently, we've gotten the Goliath Rock Grinder vehicle for Genestealer cults, which is almost directly out of Total Recall. There's a cab driver, Benny, who shows up toward the end of the movie to try and kill Schwarzenegger's character with a rock grinder type vehicle. And Schwarzenegger fights back against it with like a power drill, like a mining drill. And so clearly some people at Games Workshop watched that movie and then created the Goliath Rock Grinder vehicle for Genestealer Cult and the heavy rock drill for Genestealer Cult. So seems like some pretty obvious references there. And then 1991 to 1995, there was an animated show on MTV called Aeon Flux, which I can't say for sure that it's inspired by 40k or inspired 40k, but it I would say feels kind of 40k adjacent in that it takes place in kind of a future, kind of a dystopian future ruled by kind of a dictatorship with different warring factions and lots of like exciting action, and has these sort of like upper classes who are having like a totally different experience than sort of the hordes of the underclass. And you have like I don't know, there's so much going on in Aeon Flux. It's might be hard to track down too, but there is a DVD set out that would be totally worth watching if you can get your hands on it. It's a trippy sci-fi animated series that is sort of mysterious, where like a lot of times what's going on is not really well spelled out, and sometimes you have to watch an episode multiple times to kind of figure out what's really happening in it. And Aeon Flux is one of the characters, and she seems like she's probably a clone, or maybe the bad guy clones her at some point, or maybe has done so multiple times. And she's usually trying to kill him or assassinate him. I think his name is Trevor or something like that, and he's like a kind of a dictator of this society. There's like a couple different nations, and they're separated by like walls that have like killer turrets on them, so it's really hard to get from one area to another. And it kind of has the feeling of like a hive city, where there's just massive sprawling cities that are many layers deep and rise up to huge skyscrapers, advanced technology. Nick says, watched Aeon. There's a similar comic, but I forget the name. Interesting. Yeah, a couple that maybe honorable mention might be like Tank Girl. I don't have it on the list, but that's another fun one. Has some kind of like human hybrids, which do show up in Warhammer 40k. They call them abhumans, which are humans who have been like mutated or genetically modified. Well, I didn't do honestly a great job with the white on this guy. I laid it on a bit thick, and I did get some kind of residue from the paint that's going to be visible, so it's unfortunate. But yeah, my bad. Maybe I can add a little bit of water to kind of fix some of that. Or maybe there was already some bumps on him. I don't know. Try not to go too heavy. You should always be watering down your paint. And it's better to do 2 layers of paint that's watered down than try to make your first coat cover everything. So Aeon Flux I would recommend to 40k fans. I feel like it's got a fun mix of sci-fi and mystery and action. And let's see, that came out in 1991. In 1992, we got a Jean-Claude Van Damme sci-fi series called Universal Soldier. And it seems like potentially could be inspiration for Space Marines or vice versa. Universal Soldier is about basically they take soldiers who are killed in action and then they like bring them back to life and give them some sort of genetic enhancements to turn them into super soldiers. So kind of similar to the Space Marines in Warhammer 40k, where normal humans get turned into a super soldier through genetic modification and used in sort of a super soldier army. In Universal Soldier, they instead are part of sort of a squad, like a SWAT team kind of. Oh yeah, Nicholas points out Aeon Flux is also a movie from 2005. That's right. But I would say you could skip the movie and watch the anime with that one. And we have another one coming up also where you could skip the movie and watch the anime. So let's see here. Universal Soldier 1992. So it has kind of those themes of like the super soldier. 1994, we have a little known sci-fi movie starring Donald Sutherland called The Puppet Masters. And this reminds me a little bit of the way the Gene Stealers would infect a population and then gradually take over everybody. In The Puppet Masters, a kind of an alien lands on Earth that will latch onto the back of your neck and then take you over. And basically, I think you could die if it gets removed from the back of your neck. And then they go on to propagate themselves and start taking over more and more people until they've taken over like a whole city. And it's about sort of the efforts of the humans who are aware of this to stop the infection before it takes over the whole planet. So that one was kind of fun, very much like kind of like Gene Stealers in Warhammer 40k, which have both the sort of the alien infection spreading, but also the mind control element. Then in 1996, we got the fantastic anime movie Ghost in the Shell. So this is another one of my recommendations. And this does have some sequels. Ghost in the Shell Innocence came out in 2004, and then there was a live action movie, which again I would say you could skip, in 2017. And Ghost in the Shell is about basically a cyborg, and it's not exactly clear if she's completely a machine or if she actually has like a human spirit somehow implanted in her. Which is kind of a thing in Warhammer 40k. Like, you can have a robot, but it has to have a human being somehow implanted into it to control it. And Ghost in the Shell, again, has kind of the, Neo-Tokyo, Mega-Tokyo kind of setting, where it's set in kind of this giant city, futuristic city with advanced technology. And it's about these sort of like FBI type special forces guys taking on super advanced criminals and using these sort of robot assassins to do so. Or robot agents, I guess. Like, what's the main character's name? I actually can't remember off the top of my head. But Ghost in the Shell is an incredible series. And I don't know exactly how 40k adjacent I would say it is, but it's definitely worth checking out if you haven't seen it. Nick says, awesome, that's how I learned about Appleseed. Yeah, they have kind of a similar vibe, don't they? In 1996, we got Independence Day. So Independence Day has the arrival of a alien threat, gonna wipe out the Earth, and of course the aliens are kind of insectoid, so a little bit of like Tyranid vibes going on there, and very fun sci-fi movie. All right, I think next we're gonna paint lighter pink on his skin tones here. So I'm gonna be mixing the Screamer pink with some White Scar. Take me a second to mix that up. Independence Day, I don't know how much there is to say about it. Has kind of like the idea of like ordinary humans with modern day technology fighting against highly advanced aliens. So there's a little bit of a sort of Imperial Guard kind of feeling there. Kevin says there's also an anime series for Ghost in the Shell. That's right, Ghost in the Shell standalone complex, which was one of the first animes I saw. That's cool. I've heard it's pretty good. One of the things I loved about Ghost in the Shell was the quality of the animation. And I felt like the standalone complex, the animation wasn't quite as good, which kind of bothered me going from one to the other. I felt like it was like a step down in animation, but if that was the first one you saw, that wouldn't be a problem, because it would be you wouldn't have like a reference point for it. And of course I've enjoyed other shows that had worse animation, so I should probably give that one another try. Would you recommend standalone complex, Kevin? At least for fans of Ghost in the Shell? I thought the sequel movie Innocence was just kind of so-so, like not really required viewing, I would say. Kevin says, yes, I would recommend it. All right, cool. Always fun to get a good recommendation. So, Independence Day, 1996. If you haven't seen it and you're a 40K fan, you would definitely enjoy it, I would say. Then, I guess 2 years before that, we had 1994. We had the original Stargate movie come out, and that one was very fun. And it has some themes that kind of have echoes in Warhammer 40K. So in Stargate, they find an ancient portal buried in Egypt, which ultimately opens to transport them to another planet. And the implication is that the pyramids in ancient Egypt were built partly with the help of these alien races that built this same sort of Stargate. And in Warhammer 40K, you have similar Stargates built by the Eldar, except they're usually webway portals to their pocket dimension, but also allow them to travel throughout the galaxy. And in Warhammer 40K, we also have these like old ones and other references to like ancient alien races that had interacted with the other intelligent species around the galaxy, or created some of them, and have left like ancient ruins around the galaxy. And I believe they're the ones who created the Necrons in Warhammer 40K lore, which seems kind of like similar to some of the stuff in Stargate. Kevin says, Stargate's my jam. It's one of my favorite sci-fi franchises. So one of the cool things about Stargate is they did make a show then, which I gather is pretty good. I've seen an episode here and there, which is they made Stargate SG-1, which seems like probably the best of the shows. Then they also made Stargate Atlantis, which was another series. Maybe a good time to mention my own Atlantis theory. I don't know if you guys are aware, but the story of Atlantis, a sunken city, comes to us from Plato, talking real world here, from ancient Greece. And Plato tells us exactly where he got this story. He says that basically a friend of his had like a father or an uncle who traveled to Egypt, and while he was in Egypt, the Egyptian priests told him that basically you Greeks don't really know hardly anything of real history. Basically, here in Egypt, our history goes back much further than what you guys know in Greece. And one example that he heard was that the Egyptians knew about this story of an ancient kingdom called Atlantis, which was sunk beneath the waves. And at the time that Atlantis was sinking, the people of Atlantis were fighting a war against the Greeks. And the Greeks had just successfully fought off the invasion by the Atlanteans, who used to be the most respected people in the world. But they had started to undertake campaigns of conquest against everybody else and kind of ruined their reputation. And that was around the time when their whole city sunk beneath the waves. And up until that time, the people of Atlantis had lived in a city that was circular, and it had rings of land and water with an island in the center. And they always kept their population to 20,000 people. So they practiced like a population control. And apparently there's quite likely the location of Atlantis has finally been found, at least in my opinion, in Africa, in Mauritania, which is on the western coast. And it's not underwater anymore, but you can see where it probably was. Kevin says, yep, Stargate SG-1, Stargate Atlantis, which ran in conjunction with SG-1 with several crossover episodes, and Stargate Universe, which I don't know much about or where the timeline of the show is. Cool. Well, I'm quite convinced that the real world Atlantis was in Mauritania at this place that's now called the Eye of Africa. It was discovered from space, where they saw this circular shape in Africa from the space shuttle while it was orbiting the Earth, and then because it was too big to see from the ground. And originally it was named the Reshot structure, and it was renamed to the Eye of Africa. And it basically exactly fits the size and description of Atlantis. And you can see where there's huge reservoirs of salt where it looks like ocean water dried up there. So, and then if you look at the wider area of the Sahara Desert around there, it looks like water used to flow across it from the Mediterranean down to the Atlantic Ocean. So I'm convinced it's probably was the real site of the real Atlantis, which probably was a real city. And if you're curious about it, look up Eye of Africa Atlantis on YouTube. There's some people who have done some good kind of video essays laying out the evidence. And I think that kind of stuff is super exciting. So just wanted to mention that in passing since Stargate Atlantis came up. But let's get on with the subject at hand. So Stargate came out in 1994. And let's see. I'm trying to think of. Oh, so you have some crossover to Warhammer 40k and the webway gates of the Eldar. The idea of sort of like ancient alien races who have left behind ruins or helped create the intelligent races, but have since been kind of forgotten. Then in 1995, we had Johnny Mnemonic. So this was a movie with, what's his name? Guy from The Matrix, Keanu Reeves. And it's more like a cyberpunk movie, so I don't know how 40k related I would say it is, but it is one of these sort of cyberpunk, dark future kind of city, super city kind of movies with some interesting technology. Feels a little bit maybe Necromunda feeling. And they've got some interesting stuff like monofilament whips, which are like kind of like laser whips that will cut through anything. And a little bit of the thing of like not trusting computers, where to relay important information, they'll like implant it in someone's head and then send that person like a courier to reduce the chance of information getting intercepted or hacked. And kind of a fun movie, not great, kind of a cheesy, slightly low budget sci-fi movie, but kind of fun, maybe worth checking out if you've already seen everything else on this list. Let's see, Nick says, I recently watched some Star Wars animated shorts, and the first one was animated in black and white, like an Akira Kurosawa film. Super good. Oh, that's cool. I love Akira Kurosawa. One of his movies was supposedly part of the inspiration for Star Wars. And I guess I would say probably more than one of his movies, because he was so well known, and I'm sure George Lucas saw most of his stuff before making Star Wars. But specifically the movie Hidden Fortress starts out with these two deserters from an army, and they're sort of like the C-3PO and R2-D2 of the story, getting kind of sucked into the adventure without really having any desire to be. And supposedly those two characters were inspiration for R2-D2 and C-3PO in Star Wars. And there's like a princess who's on the run, and like a highly competent knight, kind of like Obi-Wan Kenobi, who's determined to sort of get her to safety. So a lot of crossovers with Star Wars there. And I do recommend Hidden Fortress, Kurosawa film. And the other ones of his that actually it's hard to go wrong with anything by Kurosawa, but I love The Seven Samurai, one of my favorite movies. And then he also did Yojimbo, which has been remade like about half a dozen times as For a Fistful of Dollars, and it's been remade as a fantasy movie starring David Carradine. Can't remember the name. But that one's been redone a bunch of times. And of course, The Seven Samurai was remade as a Western as well, which was The Magnificent Seven. Got another remake more recently. And The Dirty Dozen, really. Oh, interesting. Thanks, Nick. Let's see here. Where are we at? White Dwarf, 1995. So this movie is definitely one y'all can skip, but I remember seeing it when I was a teenager and thinking like, oh man, this is totally like out of the Warhammer universe. And I watched it again, or at least watched part of it again more recently, and I was like, what was I thinking? Vorkash says, do you think there are any movies that influence the Tau? Well, I would say like definitely all the Gundam style anime, and quite possibly Robotech, the Gundam series. What else would you guys say has influenced the Tau? The Tau, possibly that one, Puppet Masters, because part of the Tau kind of dark secret is that they may be using like mind-controlling brain worms to keep everybody in line. So at the same time that they're kind of good guys, there's also some kind of subtle hints that they're actually maybe slightly nefarious, or all sort of under the control of some mind-controlling brain worms that they're spreading and infecting other people with. Nick says, Magnificent Seven, you're right. Yeah, Dirty Dozen might be different. Is that World War II maybe? I can't remember. Or is that also a cowboy movie? So yeah, I'd say some of the mind control stuff could be inspiration for the Tau. And definitely the Gundam stuff. So White Dwarf, it kind of like takes place on this, it's like a sci-fi movie that's not very sci-fi. And in that way, I think it felt like a little bit like Warhammer 40k to me. Back in the sort of 80s and 90s, there was a little bit more of a kind of a fantasy feel in Warhammer 40k, especially on some of these remote worlds where, you know, you kind of felt like the high technology of the Imperium was kind of far away. you would see like orc machines that had like like shingled roofs on them and stuff like this, and sort of like castle turrets with shingles was more of a thing back in the old days in 40K. Vorkesh says, thanks, just picked up a Tau, was looking for a army theme conversion ideas for them. Well, if you're looking for something to watch while you paint Tau, I do suggest Robotech, the original television series. That would be a fun watch. I want to say the aliens in Robotech are blue. You also might check out the 90s cartoon Exo Squad. In Exo Squad, they're fighting against kind of a race of blue aliens called Neo Sapiens, who are sort of out to replace humanity. At first, they were like a genetically engineered kind of human super soldier, but they've decided that they are the next evolution of humanity and they need to wipe out and enslave the regular humans. And the show is very focused on combat using basically armored battle suits. And so you've got a race of blue creatures who are more advanced than humans. You've got battle suits. So that seems like it could be influence on the for the Tau, and sort of Tau themed. And now that I think about it, I don't know how I forgot to put it on this list. So yeah, you could check out Exo Squad. It might be a little cheesy. It was a cartoon made for kids, but sometimes those are fun to watch even in retrospect. And oh, I am remembering now another anime that was from the 90s, I think about 1998, that should have been on this list. Very cool anime, just about 1 or 2 seasons, and it's rather adult, so pretty cool, called Blue Gender. And Blue Gender is about a guy who had some kind of illness or virus that couldn't be cured, and so he got frozen in suspended hibernation. And when he wakes up, he finds that basically planet Earth has been totally destroyed by some like giant alien insects. And at first it's like a mystery of what happened. How did this happen? But he's rescued by some soldiers who are fighting in these battle suits. And he ends up being trained to pilot a battle suit. And turns out that the virus that he had is somehow important, like it allows him to pilot or something. And that was a very cool one. Definitely recommend Blue Gender if you're an anime fan and looking for something that is kind of a cult classic. So, I guess there's not a whole lot to say about White Dwarf. It's kind of like a remote sort of medieval planet in this science fiction universe. And it's like a doctor gets sent there. And I remember half the planet is always night and half the planet is day, and the two forces or the two sides of the planet are kind of at war with each other. So like the night siders will come on these raids to the daytime side, and there's like a wall between the two. It's pretty cool, kind of hokey and old-fashioned, but I'd say 90s low-budget sci-fi movie by today's standards. But they have like horse and carriage and stuff at the same time that they're on some sci-fi planet. So it had that mix of modern and old-fashioned that at the time I associated with 40K. That was called White Dwarf from 1995. I think it's probably free on YouTube. 1996, we had Space Truckers. Now this movie, when I first started watching it, it didn't exactly scream 40K at me. It's about some sort of space truckers who are supposed to take some shipment to Earth. And they're not supposed to look inside and see what's in the shipment. And it has some very funny kind of crossover with 40K in that they get sort of taken captive by space pirates at one point. And the leader of the space pirates, I kid you not, is like almost exactly like Commissar Yarrick from Warhammer 40K. To the point of having like I think he's got a giant robot claw on one arm. He wears like the coat like a commissar. I think he's got a bionic eye. and he wants to have sex with the girl, who's main girl, and it's kind of like some of the comedy of it, and he's played by the actor who plays Tywin Lannister in Game of Thrones, so like super serious actor playing this ridiculous Commissar Yarrick knockoff in Space Truckers. So if you want to have a laugh, watch Space Truckers from 1996. Kind of cheesy sci-fi movie. All right, well, we're getting there. I think now we're ready for some gold. Gonna paint his little Genestealer cult icon on his hanging from his belt, and some kind of details on his dagger. And I might even go to a smaller brush for this. These are some pretty fine details. So we're gonna break out the, what is this? Layer brush small? I guess this is like my other one, but oh, that's a base brush small. Okay, so this is my nice detail brush. The tip does look a little frayed. Maybe we can get it to a nice point. Nick says Ice Pirates 2. Yeah, I actually haven't seen Ice Pirates yet. It's on my to-watch list, but I need to find somewhere to watch it. Well, finally, in 1997, we get to the ultimate Warhammer 40k adjacent movie. The one that almost everybody mentions when they're talking about movies that could be either in the 40k universe or maybe in the distant past of the 40k universe. And some of you guys can probably guess what movie I'm about to mention, maybe not. And it is Event Horizon. So, is it based on a Michael Crichton book, or maybe I'm thinking of Sphere? So, Event Horizon is about a spaceship which has been sent on some kind of test flight into basically like another dimension, I guess. And the ship has come back, but it's not responding to signals or whatever. So crew has to be sent to go explore this ship after it's returned from who knows where. And of course the ship is seemingly like cursed or haunted. And as far as like the 40k universe connection, people theorize that it's like this ship was sent to the warp without a Jeller field to protect it. And so it's kind of been like haunted by demons from the warp is kind of the impression you get. And anyone who travels to it starts to become kind of possessed by the ship to some extent. And so it's like a sci-fi horror kind of ghost ship kind of movie. And the connection to the 40k is that it could have traveled to the warp, I guess, which in 40k is both the method of interstellar travel, but it's also like a parallel dimension inhabited by demons, where you have to have some kind of protective force field around your ship to prevent the demons kind of infecting the ship or possessing the crew or manifesting on board kind of thing. So feels like a pretty good connection. And it's usually the movie that people will bring up as being kind of 40k adjacent or like a potential distant past of the 40k, like the first time the warp was discovered kind of idea. So fun movie. I remember thinking it was like too much horror and not enough sci-fi when I first watched it as a, I don't know, 15-year-old or something. And it's, pretty scary. Not a lot of hard sci-fi, more like terror and horror and kind of like haunted ship kind of thing. And it'd be interesting one to watch again and see how I like it as an adult. It is starring the guy from Jurassic Park. Nick says that movie messed me up. You too, huh? I don't know what is the name of that actor from Jurassic Park who plays the main what do you call the person who digs up dinosaur bones? Alan Grant, is that the name of his character in Jurassic Park? Let's see here. I guess I want some silver rims on his little goggles. And I think I've got everything I wanted gold, but it might need a second coat. Maybe I could go ahead and apply a second coat now. Jacob's Ladder also messed you up, Nick? That's funny. I get that one confused with the Manchurian Candidate. I feel like there's some kind of stuff in common between those two movies. Common themes. People coming back from a military thing with like false memories or something. All right, we're getting there. Almost ready to start hitting this guy with a bunch of ink washes. Would be nice to maybe put some highlights or dry brush on his fur cloak. Sam Neill, that's the name of the actor. Thank you, Kevin. Yeah, so Sam Neill stars in Event Horizon, and you get to see him go totally crazy and evil by the end. Fair warning. So yeah, Fifth Element, fun movie. That came out in 1997. And then in 1998, we had Dark City. And I did put this one on my recommended list, but maybe I should, if I was doing this over, I might swap it for Akira, but probably most of you have seen Akira, and maybe not everyone has seen Dark City. Dark City, I feel like it really inspired the Delaque gang for Necromunda, who all wear like goggles and trench coats, and they're very mysterious, sort of creepy characters, which is very much like some of the characters in Dark City. And Dark City, it isn't obviously sci-fi when you start watching it, but by the end you realize it's sci-fi. So it's a movie where there's like kind of a big twist that I don't want to spoil, especially since I figure not everybody's seen it. But if you're a sci-fi fan and you love 40K, you'll probably find some stuff to enjoy with Dark City from 1998. And then I have my top choice for 40K adjacent movie coming up next. So I know Event Horizon is the one most people mention, but this next one I think is the most 40K adjacent movie. I'll mention just 1 second here. So this is another Kurt Russell movie. So this is his, I want to say, third time showing up, because we had Escape from New York and LA and The Thing from 1982. Now again, 1998, we have Kurt Russell movie Soldier. So Soldier, I think, is very 40K in that it's about a super soldier who's part of a sort of super soldier program, and he is being replaced by a new generation of super soldier, and him and his sort of generation of super soldiers are all going to be retired and destroyed to make room for their replacements who are more advanced. So this kind of comes up in the 40K universe in a couple ways. In the Horus Heresy, the reason that what's his name, Horus Lupercal, turned against the Emperor was that basically he foresaw the Emperor's eventual plan to destroy his own super soldiers once they were no longer required. Like once the conquest of the galaxy was complete in the Great Crusade, he foresaw that the Emperor was then going to destroy his own Adeptus Astartes Space Marines, and this was the sort of the reason for the rebellion against the Emperor by the Space Marines, or half of the Space Marines. So this kind of happens in the movie Soldier, where basically Kurt Russell has to compete in this head-to-head competition against the new generation of super soldier, and when he can't keep up, that's reason enough for him to be sort of like thrown away. He gets dumped on a trash planet, and then I think ultimately he has to end up battling against the new super soldiers when they show up to, I don't know what, finish him off or something. But it's kind of funny. There's actually some Easter eggs in the movie Soldier, which I didn't notice when I was watching the movie, but I read about online. There are Easter eggs that place Soldier in both the same universe as Event Horizon and the same universe as Star Trek. So, considering that some people kind of like half jokingly speculate that Star Trek could be in the past of Warhammer 40k and Event Horizon could be in the past of 40k, I find it very funny that Soldier has some Easter eggs that place it in the same universe as both Star Trek and Event Horizon. So, for those reasons, and because it's about super soldiers and super soldiers being retired, which also happened in 40k with the legendary Thunder Warriors. They were supposedly the Emperor's first generation of super soldiers who were almost all destroyed. That pretty much follows the story of Soldier. Like, in your headcanon, he could be one of the Thunder Warriors. And as for what the Easter eggs are, supposedly on the trash planet where the soldier gets dumped, I'm going to have to get some water. In the background of one of the shots in the heaps of trash, supposedly the wreckage of the Event Horizon was actually there in the garbage. And I don't know if it was just like they used the model from the other movie and they just had it like in the pile of random stuff. But that sounds like what it was, is they just had the Event Horizon was literally in the background of one of the shots. And then on a computer screen where you're seeing the military actions that this soldier has participated in over the years, like his military record is being displayed on the screen. One of the wars that he fought in is also mentioned in one of the Star Trek movies, and they had like purposefully put that in as a little Easter egg. So very funny. And kind of a fun movie. I would only give it like maybe 2.5 stars out of 5, but kind of fun. I'll be right back. I'm going to grab some water. We're nearing the end of the list here. That was 1998. We got Soldier. All right. Probably time to start doing some ink wash. And I'm thinking I'm going to start with black ink wash on his armor and pretty much everything metal. Looking for my Nuln Oil wash here. And I'm starting to cough a little bit, so we gotta probably wrap this up, but we're getting toward the end of the model, so good timing. In 1999, we got a very cool anime from Japan called Jinro the Wolf Brigade. And the design of these, the sort of soldiers in Jinro look a lot like the, they're sort of inspired by World War II German designs with like gas masks, kind of like World War I gas masks, combined with a more sort of futuristic power armor, and fighting with sort of heavy machine guns that kind of look like the style of World War II German machine guns. And they were sort of intended to be like the enforcement soldiers of a kind of totalitarian regime in Japan, fighting against kind of like freedom fighter guerrillas in the sewers. And Jinro the Wolf Brigade is very cool. Seemed like a little bit similar to the Death Corps of Krieg also in terms of design. And there was also a good live action movie made of it. So one of the rare instances where an anime had a good live action movie as well but it wasn't exactly like a retelling. It was more like a sequel movie called Ilang, the Wolf Brigade. So, yeah, I guess I started off talking about Starship Troopers because the book was written in 1959. So I did kind of skip over 1997 when the Starship Troopers movie came out. Good question, Nick. And as far as Starship Troopers, I would recommend the original movie Starship Troopers, and also Starship Troopers 3 was also pretty good. It had the main actor come back, Casper Van Dien. Oh man, coughing's getting pretty bad. I gotta get some sleep. Give me a second, guys. And then there's also Starship Trooper Marauder. I think was an animated one. But yeah, Starship Troopers 3, and Marauder are probably all pretty cool. Be enjoyable for a 40K fan. Vorkesh says, sleep? What's that? Yeah. Only because I'm sick. Alright. I'll try to power out the rest of this model. So we mentioned Vin Diesel. Named my little character here after Vin Diesel because I heard he plays 40K. I don't know what faction, or if he really does. But Vin Diesel movie on this list, or series of movies, would be Pitch Black and the Chronicles of Riddick. And I think there's one more. I guess then the third one was just called Riddick. And those have kind of the feeling of like a random planet sci-fi that could be in the Warhammer universe, perhaps. And they go to like a prison planet, I think, in one of them. And those are pretty fun. Could potentially be Warhammer adjacent movies. Trying to rest my voice for a second. Oh, let's do his little remote detonator up here. And then 2002, we got the TV series Firefly. Went for about 2 years before it got sort of prematurely canceled. They brought it back to make a movie, Serenity. And I would say Firefly is more of a ripoff of the anime Cowboy Bebop, but it is have some kind of 40K-ish kind of elements to it. Nicholas says there's a D&D one-off with Vin DM'd by Matt Mercer on YouTube. It would be fun to watch Vin Diesel play D&D. Be fun to play Warhammer 40K against him too, I bet. So Firefly and Serenity, definitely worth checking out if you haven't seen them before. You have kind of like a ragtag crew of a ship, which is kind of like a rogue trader vessel from Warhammer 40K. Merchant ship flying around having adventures, and they're kind of being pursued by kind of a totalitarian government fleet called like the Federation or something. And another one that I saw somebody say they thought was kind of 40K adjacent, but I don't know if I would agree, was Equilibrium, a 2002 movie where it's kind of a totalitarian society, kind of a dystopia where I think nobody's allowed to have like emotions, if I remember right, and there's sort of like government enforcers who are always arresting people. And it's another Christian Bale movie, so his second time on here because he was in Terminator Salvation, I think. And Equilibrium, he's like a sort of a super soldier enforcer for the government, but then he starts to discover emotions, which means he turns into one of the resistance basically, and he's having to sort of hide that what he's experiencing from the other like government agents, and at the same time try to like make contact with the resistance, and maybe he's like gets double crossed. I don't really remember exactly. Been a while since I saw that one. Oh yeah, Kevin says gun fu. Yeah, that's how you definitely gun fu. That's funny. And then I just have a few others to mention here. One that I haven't seen, but I watched a couple minutes of it on YouTube today, is called The Mutant Chronicles. It's from 2008. And I could see why someone said it was 40K adjacent. It kind of reminded me of like Imperial Guard fighting against mutants or something on some kind of foggy battlefield. Looked kind of like low budget sci-fi. And then there was like some spaceship landing to like pick them up, like a drop ship or something coming to extract them. So felt kind of Imperial Guard-esque. Looked kind of fun, kind of interesting, but in the minute or two that I saw, there wasn't much more besides action going on. But could be interesting to check out if you're curious about it. And then Avatar 2009. Maybe that's a good one to watch for Tau inspiration. So Avatar... kind of 40K adjacent. You've got like the sort of Imperial Guard style human forces on this alien planet interacting with I guess a primitive alien race, and ultimately fighting a battle against them. I wouldn't say a war. Have we got a sequel to Avatar yet? I feel like that's been in the works for a while, if it didn't already come out and I missed it. You guys hear about that? Sequel to Avatar. I guess the blue aliens in Avatar kind of remind me a little bit of the Kroot in Warhammer 40K in terms of the way they have kind of like Native American-esque kind of culture. And they aren't like super technologically advanced, but they're still able to, fight a battle against a highly advanced race. I guess it's going to be a problem. All this wash I put on this cloak is going to pool and puddle. I'm going to try and pull some of it off with my brush to cut down on that. And I suppose I'll just keep rotating the miniature a bit too. Could help. In 2009, we got a very 40K movie, but one that probably nobody here has seen. Definitely kind of flew under the radar. Called Pandorum. And I'm putting it on my recommend list. But it's definitely kind of an outside-the-box pick. And Pandorum, basically, the storyline is about a bunch of people who wake up on board a spacecraft, and they can't really figure out what's going on. Like, where are they? They've been in, like, some kind of suspended animation or hibernation And apparently one of the side effects of being in hibernation for a long time is that you can lose some of your memories. So they've all just started coming out of hibernation and they don't have their memories at first. So as the movie goes on, they're trying to figure out basically what's going on. And on board the spaceship with them are these sort of like almost like human hybrids or something, almost like alien hybrids that are cannibalistic and feeding on people as they like awaken from their tubes. So kind of again sci-fi alien survival horror, and also one that's got kind of mysterious twists, kind of like Dark City, that I don't want to spoil. And it kind of reminds me of like the Gene Stealer cults, like what it might be like to awaken on a spaceship where the Gene Stealer cults are already out of control. And kind of a fun movie. Again, kind of a low budget movie, but one that does it well, where you're, you know, the focus is on effects that look good, you know, like costumes and sort of cool sets, and you don't really feel like it suffers too much from the low budget. I guess we could use this same brown wash on all the red. So I'm gonna go ahead and wash his little TNT dynamite. So Pandorum 2009, that's another one of my top 10 here. Not for everybody because it's got kind of some grisly horror and violence, but as long as you can tolerate that, it's pretty fun. And I like how it's exciting and sci-fi and has the kind of mysterious element and sort of twists to it. All right, we'll let him sit for just a minute, and then we'll try to deal with some of the pooling and puddling of the ink wash before it all dries in place. Nicholas says Moon is like that. Yeah, Moon is another sci-fi movie with some twists and mysteries, and a guy waking up kind of without knowing how he got there kind of thing in a kind of a sci-fi space environment. Those are some good parallels. All right, there's a little ink wash on the IED there. All right, gonna ink wash on his skin and his white armor, but we're not quite there yet. Oh yeah, here's where I'm worried about all the ink wash getting out of control on his cloak. Maybe we'll leave him face down for a second so his cloak can dry a little more. And I suppose let's get ready to do the ink wash on his skin next, maybe? It's going to be a Carroburg Crimson shade paint. I've only got 2 more movies on my list here. So somebody somewhere suggested Jupiter Ascending, 2015 sci-fi movie. And I don't know if I really agree with that one, but might as well mention it. It does kind of feature the idea of like alien races that either created humanity or somehow have like dominion over humanity, showing up to enforce their laws on planet Earth. I seem to remember it's like planet Earth is like inherited by a certain noble family, and this girl doesn't realize she's actually descended from these this alien race, and that she's actually supposed to like inherit planet Earth or something. Then someone else wants to like destroy Earth so that she'll never get to have it. That's about what I remember. Can't remember if I saw the whole thing or if I read a synopsis or what. But I wasn't hugely impressed by Jupiter Ascending, but we could have it on the list. Why not? And then the last one I have on here, which I also haven't... also Moon was like low budget, done well. Good point. Last one I have on this list is 2020 release. So this was called... it was like a series. And I don't remember if it was on... I don't think it was Netflix. I thought it was something else. Amazon Prime. I can't remember, but it's called Raised by Wolves. Did anyone see that? When I was watching the trailers for Raised by Wolves, I kept thinking, "Whoa, this is like totally inspired by Warhammer," and I think it was something like robots were outlawed or something like that, and some robots had like gone to another planet to raise people. I don't remember exactly, but something about it was definitely giving me Warhammer 40k vibes. Kind of the feeling of like an Inquisition was coming to hunt them down. Seemed very 40k. Did anybody see Raised by Wolves? All right, let's see. Let's give him probably a little ink wash on his nameplate. We're just about there. Now my voice is coming back. It's gonna be finished. All right. Going back to Nolan Oil. Wanted to do his nameplate just about last with the ink wash because it's like where I tend to handle the model. There we go. That looks good. Just help give a little extra definition to his name. And let's maybe try a little extra wash on his little loincloth there, if I can. So that was my list of 40k adjacent movies. Tried to make it about as complete as I could. I think you guys had a couple suggestions for me that I did leave out that I tried to mention along the way. Let's see, any that you guys think I should have added that I forgot? Probably hard to know unless you're here for the whole list, but what's your favorite 40k adjacent movie? I guess I'll count through my top 10 that I had picked out were Starship Troopers, Alien, The Thing, John Carpenter's The Thing from 1982, Blade Runner from 1982, Predator from 1987, the original. Although I have I think I'm discovering a new love of the sequel Predator 2. I want to rewatch that. Ghost in the Shell, Dark City, which maybe I would have swapped out that or Pandorum for Akira. Soldier from 1998 with Kurt Russell. I guess I had Jinro, the Wolf Brigade on my list, and Pandorum 2009. So those were my top 10 to check out if you haven't seen them already. And yeah, a lot of fun coming up with that list. Fun topic for tonight. Hopefully you guys got some movies to put on your watch list. I was going to try and give you guys ideas of where to watch them, but I feel like, that's always changing. Something will be on Netflix and then 2 months later they'll take it off, so not exactly worth telling you where to hunt stuff down. You can kind of figure that out yourselves, I'm sure. Gonna give him just a little bit of watered down black on his shoulder pad. Great job. Thanks, Nick. I appreciate it. I've definitely watched a lot of movies over the years. I just saw a movie last night that I had kind of a new appreciation for, which was Red with Bruce Willis. Oh, how did I not mention The Fifth Element? I thought I had that on my list, didn't I? Maybe I skipped over it by mistake. But I think I meant to mention The Fifth Element. Classic sci-fi movie there. Has kind of the giant skyscraper cities that we think of with hive cities. Some kind of orc-like alien mercenaries. You don't really see space orcs in pretty much anything, do you? Except 40K. But in the aliens in Fifth Element might be about as close as you get to space orcs in a movie. I'm sure I had The Fifth Element here and I just skipped over it. Let's see here. When would that have come out? Probably in the 90s? Fifth Element, 1997. So in between Event Horizon and Dark City. I don't think I mentioned that one. I must have skipped it by mistake. Well, here you can see how our miniature's doing. I think all I have left is a little silver rim on his glasses and a little bit of an ink wash, like a sepia ink wash on his white parts of his exposed skin there. Dune, yep, I mentioned Dune as a book, I think, 1965. So that was right at the beginning of the list, but we have two movies. 1984 was the what's his name? Was the one by the Twin Peaks director. And 2021 remake. Oh, I did mention Fifth Element. But yeah, the 2021 Dune remake movie is definitely on my to-watch list. I almost don't know why I haven't seen it already, but I very much want to. All right, I think we can throw a little ink wash on this guy very carefully here real quick. So I've got a Seraphim Sepia ink wash, and I'm going to be putting it on the white parts of his sort of chitinous armor, just to give it like a little bit of shadowing and complexity without hopefully making it look all yellow. Sepia is a very yellow wash, but I sometimes like it on white just because it's one of the lighter color washes I have. And I can always back it off a little bit by drying out my brush and picking it off a little bit, soaking it up. All right, well, that's the miniature about finished. Oh, let's do that little silver rim on his glasses. I forgot. And we'll call him finished and end the stream after that. So just going back to Iron Hand Steel here, and we'll use the same small brush, small layer brush. Getting hardly any paint on there, and just going to try to very delicately hit the rim of his goggles. Very tough to do. Ah, I already messed up there, hit his nose. And I don't have any more pink mixed. Let's just fix that real quick. Get a little bit of white. Get a little bit of pink. Screamer pink there. almost feel like this would be easier to do watching the video than actually the paintbrush itself. All right, I think I hit it. All right, I'm gonna call that finished, guys. Thanks for joining me for this painting stream of the Reductus Saboteur. I'll go ahead and put him on my little spinner for a final look at the miniature, and then we'll wrap up the stream. Let's go ahead and watch the before video again as I set up the finished result here. So here he was before I primed him, so you can see he's scratch built out of a bunch of miniatures from my bits bin. Got my little spinner out here. Getting my camera angle set up here, 1 second. And let's switch video to the painting cam. All right, here we go, the finished results. My Kit Bash Reductus Saboteur, all ready for my new Genestealer Cults Codex to arrive in a few days. Very looking forward to trying this guy out in game. Should be fun. The Demolitions Expert for the Genestealer Cult. Thank you for watching, everybody. Thanks for joining me in the stream. Vorkesh says, looks good. See you on the battlefield Tuesday. Hey, all right. Thanks for watching the stream. And very much looking forward to getting some battle reports on the channel very soon. Planning to play this Saturday and next Tuesday, and probably the Saturday coming up after that. So getting a lot of games lined up, and hopefully we'll have all the technical difficulties worked out. And really looking forward to getting some battle reports on the channel. So see you guys tomorrow, 7 p.m., and have a good night.